coronavirus and locally and globally, and what other headlines are taking center stage in the world. From 7 to 8, we'll be having more conversation on what's happening around the world. 8 to 9, we'll talk to Wanjiru Gikonyo, Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. Then we'll also talk to one of the hoteliers who've sent their workers home. They've closed their hotels. We'll also be talking to Dr. Marcy Korir in this show, so you can call in with your questions or anything that you'd like to know about coronavirus and how the country is coping with this coronavirus fight. So this is what is prepared for you ahead in this show.
Right. Well, looking at the numbers now and what has changed over the last 24 hours, or at least since we were here last, 858,669 cases. So we're looking at an increase of almost 100,000, 42,151 deaths, and still 178,099 recovered cases. We want to look at per country and see how that has changed. And some of what the World Health Organization and other leaders are calling hotspot countries. We know now that the United States is the epicenter, is the new epicenter of the Western Hemisphere. So, unbelievably, we have an additional 24,000 cases in the United States. Yesterday, we were at 164,000. Today, 188,530. If we look into Italy now, 105,792 cases. And we have total deaths in Italy at 12,428. So an increase of 508 cases in Italy from yesterday. Spain is also doing the numbers. 95,923 cases with 8,464 deaths. China still at 81,518 cases with 3,305 deaths.
How many new cases in China?
No new cases in China. Since yesterday, we had the new cases were at 31, but no new cases in China in the last 24 hours. No deaths, and they've been able to keep that.
The number of deaths is taking center stage in the discussion, but how many new people have been infected?
In China?
No, not
in
China.
The world.
In the world.
Yeah, quite a number. Now, interestingly enough, in Italy, there are more deaths, but as of between yesterday and today, in the last 24 hours, there have been no new cases.
Okay.
So
No new cases
in the last 24
deaths?
hours, but 508 deaths between yesterday and today.
But also the death toll is declining.
Is declining as well.
Yes.
But I think this is for the first time in Italy, is it?
For the first time in the last 1 week. Because as of Saturday, we had deaths at 700, and then on Sunday we had deaths at 809. On Monday, there were now 896 deaths. Yesterday, there were 792 deaths. And then between yesterday and today now, 500 deaths. So
no new cases.
No new cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at least Italy is now getting into that phase.
So they're getting to the point whereby they've been, in terms of containment and making sure that they don't get any new cases, now managing what they already do have, and then trying to stem death. But this is where we are.
With the kind of unrest that we've started seeing in Italy in the news, people demanding that they want to be given food, saying they're sitting in the house and they don't have food.
They don't have food.
I think this comes as good news because it means that sooner rather than later, that lockdown will be lifted. At least they'll start having some movement. It's a good thing.
And a country, interestingly, that one of the only countries to have registered new cases in the last 24 hours. So we have a number of them, but very few. And countries where things seem to have stemmed. Mexico, 121 new cases. Interestingly enough, South Korea, 101 cases. And then New Zealand with 51 cases. And finally, Bolivia with 8 cases. Those are the only, and then Suriname with 1 case. So 5 countries in the world with new cases, plus what we saw in Kenya, Uganda, and in Nigeria yesterday.
So we have no new cases in the UK and...
No. Only 8.
But in America.
Yeah. So with the Americas, the new cases that we saw apart from that. So it seems that new cases now are sparsely coming in, but we don't know what the next few days will bring.
Oi. I hope the hotspot is basically just coming to Africa now.
It is.
After America, the hotspot comes here.
Mexico has a population of 129, 130 million.
Yes.
And the reported cases are how many?
Give me 2 seconds and I'll get that information for you.
Total cases in Mexico.
Total cases in Mexico, where we are right now, is 1,215, with now 121 cases in the last 24 hours.
Mexico isn't following any stringent measure
No.
of distance keeping, lockdowns, isolation.
No.
Nada.
No.
So, in reality, what we then should expect, if we were to go by the trends we've been seeing, is that sooner rather than later there'll be a spike, isn't it?
Mexico is
Yes.
going to get hit.
Well, why don't we watch and see?
And watch and see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what
Because
happens.
remember,
here.
Mexico is literally next door to America.
Yeah.
And we heard calls that they actually were very interested now in putting up a wall to stem any kind of influx of cases from the United States.
Yes. Remember Texas?
Texas is like the Busia-Uganda border, Busia border
Exactly.
here.
And
People are
Texas-
walking across
And Texas has been hit.
big time.
Yes, it has. Yes. So, since we know that the virus doesn't walk itself, the likelihood of there being an infusion of the virus into Mexico because of its proximity to the U.S., again, let's watch.
Let's watch
Let's
and see what
see.
happens.
Today's proverb, City.
Today's proverbs is, do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle. This saying is attributed to the Ashanti, partly because this particular group of people from Ghana, the area they come from is actually heavily forested. And for the longest time, many of them, have earned a living through managing this particular resource. Okay, but if I were to juxtapose it, like that word juxtapose, put side by side and compare that with a saying that perhaps is close in meaning, would be the English saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you."
Yeah.
Yes.
Do not call the forest that you reside in a jungle.
Don't call the forest that shelters you a jungle.
Okay.
Tutaichambua tukiendelea.
Tukiendelea tu. In the headlines today, the Standard carries the story of a man who fought for Kenyans. This is a tribute for Catholic bishop who stood up to government and demanded political and economic freedoms. Ndingi Mwananzeki retired in 2007 and he passed on yesterday. Now, we got many tributes. President Uhuru Kenyatta said he's a Kenyan icon, a bastion of peace, and a man of true faith who answered his lifelong calling as minister of the gospel and a shepherd of mankind. Raila Odinga, Kenyans knew that they could always count on him to stand and speak in defense of truth and justice, whatever the threat that posed to his life. He was one of the brightest lights to have graced our nation. Archbishop Anthony Muheria of the Catholic Church says his sense of integrity made him totally uncompromising with evil or those who mistreated the poor. A great son of our church, a great shepherd, and a great patriot. Paul Muite, the politician and lawyer, his contribution during the dark days of our republic was invaluable. He was a moral voice in the struggle for the second liberation. Reverend Timothy Njoya Ndingi was in the league of those chivalrous servants of God who carried their cloth with dignity as opposed to present-day capitalist clerics who prefer carrying money bags. And Koigu Mwere says, since Ndingi retired, the church has lost its voice, yet it's expected to be the conscience of the society. He was among the most courageous people that I know. It's a terrible thing that we have lost him. Ndingi Mwananzeki, Archbishop, 1931 to 2020.
His voice was not silent, especially at times when calling for peace in the country, calling for reforms in the country as far as governance was concerned. So he wasn't quiet. No question as to what his stance was and his contribution towards the country. In
Indeed.
terms of development.
The group of clerics at that time, Ndingi Mwananzeki, this one, Reverend Timothy Njoya, Benjamin Zimbi and Archbishop Manasseh Kuria,
Okulu.
Okulu. You know.
Then you had the gentleman who...
Bishop Muge, Alexander
Yes.
Muge.
Then we had the PCA. I'm trying to remember who the moderator then was. PCA has had some very, very outspoken
Yeah.
moderators.
Yeah.
The people don't flinch. They will say it as it is.
That's right.
There's an axiom. There's a thinking among people that sometimes greatness calls unto greatness. What I mean is this. I'm going to give you the example of sports. During the time of Muhammad Ali, that division that he belonged to, the heavyweight division, you really couldn't tell who was going to win a contest.
No.
There was no taking it for granted. No. There was Norton. There was Ali. There was Fraser. There was George Foreman. And when you went to the lower, the light, now that is where now you really couldn't tell because you had Sugar Ray. Okay? Then you had Duran. A whole host of them. Come to football. Think of the time when Pele was... You found... It wasn't just Pele. Pele may have stood out, but there were
many others.
There was Beckenbauer. There was who. It's like you actually say it was raining greatness. And then when that season passed, you'd find one person standing out. But during some of those periods, it wasn't one person. In fact, you're more or less spoiled for choice.
For choice.
And again, as you say, even if you talk about the prelates of that particular time, and you look at even the politicians of the time, those voices were many.
There were many, yes.
Yes. It's just that few have survived. Raila Odinga takes pole position when people are looking at those. But in his time, there were many who claimed that same mantle as he did. People don't talk much about Koigi, but he was right there.
Right
Yep.
there.
Yes, the late Anyona, he was right there.
Yep.
Professor Oyugi, they were, Onyiri Kioro, right there. There were many, many people who stood up to be counted. Many.
It's a good thing. It's good that we celebrate some of these people. Somebody like this Archbishop Ndingi Mwananzeki, and remembering what he stood for, and then looking at what Reverend Timothy Njoya is saying, that we had servants of God who carried their cloth with dignity, as opposed to present day capitalist clerics who prefer carrying money bags.
Right. I think in true form, the man hasn't lost his form, has he?
Nothing. Nowadays, they're just money bags.
No, they're just looking for money.
Their cloth is for carrying money.
Is it true though?
Let me put it
Isn't
this
I
way.
mean,
Well.
it carries some weight in terms of what it is.
It is
that
not.
Well.
said.
It is
Well,
not
okay.
difficult to give that statement credence.
Credence. Okay.
It's not
there you-
difficult.
There are many, of course. There are many people, men and women of the cloth, who are living true to their calling.
This is true.
And there are also very many who are very vocal and visible on the other side.
Another nice
Yes,
way to
yes,
put it.
Yes.
All right, looking at other stories that are making headlines today. Curfew. On the front page of The Nation, unfortunately, the death of a 13-year-old boy, Yasin Hussein Moyo, who was enjoying a typical evening in the balcony of his father's rented home in Nairobi's Kia Michael slums. The fourth born in a family of 7 was playing and cracking jokes with his siblings and mother when a bullet hit his stomach, ruptured his internal organs and claimed his life. In the latest of the police brutality during the curfew, Yasin would have sat his KCP exams at the Nduruno Primary School at the end of this year. But unfortunately, he was shot. And it's said to have been a stray bullet because he was on the 3rd floor
What
of this
on earth
apartment.
was that bullet doing in that direction?
Right, he was on the 3rd floor of this balcony, right? 3rd floor up and of this apartment building, and the police were down there at some point trying to get people home, or rather, chasing people away from the area because it had come to around about 7 o'clock, and they were shooting.
Shooting?
Yes, they were, and unfortunately, a stray bullet, as it were,
What? Why were they shooting?
hit this boy, and they rushed to take him to hospital. And his father at some point said, you know what, curfew be damned, I have to run up and find out what, because he was called by his children, his other daughters, and said, look, Yasin has been shot. And he said, okay, well, curfew be damned, I'm going to run up and find out how I can get my son, take him to hospital. And unfortunately, by the time the doctors were able to work on him, he was gone. The office of the DPP has said that the investigations will begin to find out exactly what happened. But in this case, it's clear what happened. Stray bullet, got this young man, and unfortunately, his life.
This investigation should not take long.
It shouldn't. It seems to
Ballistics, bullet came from which gun?
Right.
All right, so let's now start talking to the police officer. Why were you firing?
Why were you firing in the first place? I mean, what were we talking about? Trying to get people to go home at curfew hour? Was use of
That
bullets
bit we
necessary?
understand. What was he firing at?
This is the question. Why fire at this? What was it necessary at that point for anything?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't necessary, even if it meant getting people home at the time when the curfew was the curfew hour had dropped. Look, no need for any kind of shooting, as far as I'm concerned.
This is where now
This is one of the things that we see as a result of happy-go-lucky, trigger-happy police force.
They need to be reined in. Whatever mistake that police officer thought was being made, or whatever mistake the police officer himself made, he's got to pay for it.
Yeah, because there's no answer that's going to make sense to this boy's parents. The child was playing,
and this should not even be a long, drawn-out investigation.
Not
it's
necessary.
one bullet, it hit one person, and
he died.
And he died. This is it. It must have come from one police officer's gun.
It would be seen as this accident, but we've had many cases of these stray bullets.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they seem to like striking young people.
Young people. Babies.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. 19 minutes after 6 o'clock, this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store. And just one subscription fee, you get to access the Standard from wherever you are, both locally in the country or in Africa or in the world. Good morning. Let's take a look at the weather.
All right, let's take a look at what it looks like. Fog quite low in Nairobi today at 17 degrees. It's going to be that way for a minute, and it takes us into the afternoon with possibility of rain showers, highs of 27 and lows of 16. Taking a look then into Nyeri at 16 degrees. It's partly cloudy. Rain expected in the afternoon, then with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nakuru this morning, we're looking at cloudy conditions, highs of 27 and lows of 14. And in Eldoret at 13 degrees, it's clear skies with some cloudy conditions coming in the afternoon with highs of 25 and lows of 12. In Kisumu at 19 degrees, it's clear skies this morning through the day, highs of 32 and lows of 19. In Malindi at 28 degrees, looking at highs of 33 and lows of 28, showers expected in the afternoon. Mombasa 27 degrees, is partly cloudy through the day, highs of 33 and lows of 27. Into East Africa now, in Kampala at 21 degrees, it's partly cloudy. Showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 27 and lows of 21. 26 degrees in Dar es Salaam, and thunderstorms expected in the afternoon with highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg is 16 degrees and it's clear skies all through, except some rain showers expected in the afternoon, highs of 22 and lows of 10. Looking then into Lagos, it's already light thunderstorms this morning at 26 degrees, likely to go through most of the day, and it'll settle down with cloudy conditions, highs of 33 and lows of 26. And then into London at 2 degrees, it's clear skies right now, cloudy conditions to follow later, with highs of 11 and lows of 2. In Paris at 4 degrees, clear and sunny skies this morning, highs of 13 and lows of 1. And finally in New York at 6 degrees, it's cloudy conditions through most of the day, highs of 8 and lows of 4.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is the Situation of Kenya's biggest conversation. We're live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. Join the live stream as well wherever you are. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Spice FM KE is the handle. Let's take a look at what's on the Nation headline.
Right, so apart from that story of this young boy who died, the virus, keep your distance to stay safe. This is according to the Ministry of Health. And Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, who is the CAS at the Ministry of Health, says, as you're all aware, we do not have enough healthcare workers. You know, right?
Yep.
We know, and now clearly you know, in our facilities. We are in the process of hiring 1,000 health workers to boost our capacity. Why did she say this? So that to enforce the point that we need you to do what you can to make sure that you're not coming in and then burdening the already burdened facilities.
We don't have the capacity.
We don't have the capacity to deal with this. So we see a little bit of that honesty that we've spoken about coming out yesterday, coming out now in this statement that, you know, look, guys, this is a little bit of what the situation looks like. We can't. So is there something you can do about it? Absolutely. If you can stay home, please, maybe still a bargain at this point. But if you can stay home, please stay at home. Again, because you are the vehicles. We as human beings are the vehicles of this virus.
Yeah.
It doesn't move on its own. People move it. If you come to hospital, it's likely that we're not going to be able to take care of you in the way in which we should be. So please, try and stay at home. In link to this, there have been quite a number of, panic shootouts with the question that is the virus airborne? A World Health Organization warning to health workers that proximity could lead to transmission through the air in some environments has led to curiosity among researchers that the virus could be airborne, making social distancing and wearing of masks critical measures to keep safe. Now, I think duty bound on us to talk about this. That there was one study that was done by the World Health Organization. And actually, by the time we saw this flying all over social media a couple of days ago, and then people asking questions, I had to go into the nitty-gritty of it and say, this is actually what is happening. The World Health Organization undertook a study, and they said they wanted to find out. So they had set particular temperatures and particular levels of humidity. And then it was aerosoled, basically. So somebody coughed, sneezed, and then they wanted to test and see within these particular temperatures and these levels, how long will the virus stay in the air, right? And that is what they did. And they said, if certain levels of humidity and temperature are maintained, the virus then can stay in the air for about 8 hours. Now, we don't know the details, whether it was 30 degrees, 20 degrees, 10 degrees. They didn't give us that information. And I think for good reason, because they didn't want the kind of panic that is sweeping to happen. So we don't know the temperatures within which, but it is also very clear that this temperature does not maintain equilibrium everywhere at the same time. It is not possible, right? So this is what they're talking about now. You sneeze, you cough. That's why they're saying maintain social distancing and then cover your mouth when you do, in case you have it. But it is not airborne whereby it's hanging, because what people think right now is that this virus is somewhere hanging around in the air, and then once it can land on your skin or land on your face and you're going to get it. I think that we need to debunk. It's very clear that that has not happened at this point.
While we're debunking that, we also need to perhaps talk about this thing that has also been in the media, the use of chloroquine, the use of antiretrovirals, the use of anti-inflammatory drugs, the use of drugs for arthritis and so forth, some heavy-duty antibiotics and so forth. The reality is this. There are very many countries, there are very many pharmaceutical companies who are involved in trials. What trials means is that right now there are patients who have tested positive. The drugs they are using do not need to go through the lengthy process of trial to determine how human beings react to them. They are drugs which are already in the market, which means they went through those processes.
Yep.
So they can actually try them on human beings because the safety measures are understood, the response to the human person is understood. Now, it's going on all over the world. There's information, if you look at page 11 of the Standard, information from Life Science, MIT, EU Clinical Trials Register, Bloomberg. There are countries all across the world. There are drug companies who have even given up their patents they waived their patents on certain drugs. One of them is Caletra and Lopinavir and Ritonavir. These are drugs that are known and used as antiretroviral treatment for antiretroviral treatments. Now, what they do is they stop viruses from replicating in early stages. It is known, it is proven, so they stop them. That's what they do. So they don't multiply. Remember, they exist. They just stop the multiplication. One of the reasons why I use a combination is because each of these antiretrovirals does something else. This one stops replication. The other one, another one will block it. Another one will sort of like confuse it, meaning they do many things. So that combination therapy is what now guarantees you the better results that you have. Okay. Now, when I say right across the globe, I mean it. You have trials taking place in South Korea. You have trials taking place in the US. You have trials taking place in Norway. All these trials are using drugs that are already on the market, that went through all these lengthy medical and scientific processes, but they're now being tried to see how best they can stem the tide of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Let me repeat, trials are being conducted. At the end of these trials, we will be able to know comprehensively what these drugs can do or what they cannot do against COVID-19. But as of now, there is no single trial that has come out with results to say we have proved conclusively that this is what it can do. What has been in the media are positive signs of what the drugs can do. Now, that has been taken to mean they work conclusively. That is not what the scientists are saying. They are still working on it. They're still trying to determine the effectiveness. And when they know for sure, they will say so.
They will say so. This is the thing. I mean, through all of this, I think there's a lot of speculation that's going on. Everybody's talking, okay, well, I think and maybe CT can bear witness, scientists, especially on a global scale, are duty-bound to share the results of the research that they do, especially when it comes to things like this, clinical trials and such. There's no reason to go through an entire clinical trial. There's no reason to test drugs and go through drug testing if then you're not going to let the public know that this is what we have found. This then is now safe for use, or this now is then safe for treatment of a particular ailment. That's what they do, and that's what they're duty-bound to do, to let us know.
In fact, some of the things that they're doing, for instance, with some of the drugs that prevent tuberculosis and the like, these are being tested among health workers. You have volunteers, 4,000 medical workers in Australia, 1,000 medics in Netherlands. So it isn't just people who have tested positive for the coronavirus who have these things being tested on them. No. And they've even focused on just one group who are actually being asked to produce combinations of these drugs which they feel might work. And these are Eli Lilly and the Canadian startup Abcalera and Japan's Takeda. They are all working towards developing the drugs, yes, that come from this trial, the combinations that they're working on to see this is what actually works.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got to hand it to them. This is something that they started. They hit the ground running with this one.
Yep.
Went into research, started trying, started testing immediately. As in, first of all, here's this thing. It has shown up. All right, how can we treat it? And let's get the work done. Let's start on it. So
all this competitiveness that normally features in these business entities went out of the window.
Oh yeah, everybody's now working together.
Yes,
Yeah.
they've realized this one. Everyone is putting their resources towards this particular goal.
Let's deal with this and let's see the best we can. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we are broadcasting in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi, and live streaming to the world, www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Keep it right here. Let's take a look at traffic and then we continue with the newspaper review.
Going to be an interesting morning on Thika Road today because it's closed at survey for some reason. You need to use another route. So if you're approaching or trying to exit from that particular area, you might want to plan in a different manner because that you will not be able to use today. Very poor visibility on Mombasa Road today, all the way from Cabanas towards JKIA. The fog is quite low. The clouds are quite low today. So you want to use your fog lights and you want to also take it easy so as to avoid any kinds of accidents. All right. Looking at other parts of the city, it seems to be free flowing, not much of an issue anywhere, knowing that traffic has greatly reduced over the last number of days. So apart from that, nothing right now to report. Ferry still in operation. You need to get there early so that you can make your way out onto the mainland or the island if that is where you are going, and get your business so that you can get back in good time towards the end of the day. We'll let you know what it looks like as the day picks up. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Let us know what you see and keep people moving this morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
So if you're at home, you're not leaving the house, but you'd like to access the Standard, remember you can download the Standard newspaper app on Google Play Store and Apple App Store. Just one subscription fee, you get to access the paper. Also, if you'd like the hard copy delivered right to your doorstep, you can call these numbers. Anthony Mutunga, if you're in Nairobi or the metropolitan region, 0702 905 941. That is 0702 905 941. Anthony Mutunga will ensure that the newspaper is delivered to you if you're in Nairobi, Machakos, Kiambu, Kajiado, or the entire of that region, the Nairobi metropolitan region. If you're in Mount Kenya and the coast, then call 0702 905 780. 0702 905 780. And the gentleman called Benson Gitao will sort you out. Mark Odiembo is sorting out the people in Rift Valley and the Nyanza regions. If you'd like the newspaper delivered to your doorstep, just call this number and he'll organize for that to be delivered. 0776 756 107. 0776 756 107. The bold and factual newspaper will be delivered to your doorstep right anywhere throughout this period. Remember, WHO has said the newspaper is still a safe piece of material that you can still use and you can still touch and hold. It does not transmit the virus.
Okay, well, it seems that 2.3 million youth are lost in Kenya. The state cannot account for millions who have not been accommodated by the country's employers. Kenya cannot account for 2.3 million of its youth who, as of last December, consisted of a lost generation that was neither working nor in any form of education or training. Their fate is unknown as they are technically not unemployed, as they were not actively seeking a job in the period when 4 quarterly labor surveys were conducted. In rather startling findings, only about 925,000 people in the country qualify as out of jobs, putting the national unemployment rate at just 4.9%. The findings are contained in a new report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics released yesterday that has for the first time revealed surprising demographics on Kenyans born between 1985 and 2004. It paints a grim picture of a swelling youthful population that cannot be accommodated by the economy, turning unemployment into the biggest headache for the Jubilee administration. Job creation was a key pillar of the promises that were propelled during President Uhuru Kenyatta's campaign in the last 2 elections, in an economy where unemployment remains a major problem for millions of ordinary Kenyans. So,
this is worrying.
it is.
It's actually the topic on the Standards editorial.
Yes.
And it says, there can't be a harsher indictment of the government and our society than this. These young people did not just disappear from the radar, just like those wasting away in poorly paying jobs that are 1,000 times below their qualifications, or those scavenging for a living in menial tasks that barely earn them enough for a meal. They are epithets of the new normal, waiting millions of others in school and college. This is wrong. This is basically what we're saying. This explains why successive governments have struggled to contain growing unemployment numbers and urban poverty, because you basically have 2.3 million young Kenyans whom you do not know where they are.
Where they are.
How?
So.
Every year, the government announces thousands of training opportunities in tertiary institutions for young people, but there has never been any effort to find out what happens to the thousands of others who never qualify for admission. As a result, policies are being formed with huge gaps that do not reflect the needs and challenges of all demographic groups. Truth, truer words have never been spoken. 2.3 million.
Where did they go?
And you have a government that's working. Anyway.
Right, East Africa plans to fight the virus jointly. Leaders in East Africa on Monday resolved to formulate a regional response to maintain the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the aegis of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, the leaders said they will forge a joint approach to curb the spread of the virus. They will. We don't know when. The leaders from Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Sudan, Somalia, and South Sudan said in a statement released by Uhuru Kenyatta that the region is facing a huge challenge in managing the global pandemic. They've appealed to the international community to provide support for vulnerable groups, particularly refugees within IGAD countries, and to support national efforts to ensure that humanitarian corridors remain open. So the region is coming together.
It's good. I think it's good to see that. It's good to see IGAD coming together. How many countries are we talking about? Ethiopia, Djibouti, Uganda, Sudan, Somalia, South Sudan.
7.
It's important that we see them coming in, because one of those things that they've raised there, the refugees in these countries, people in the refugee camps.
How are they being taken care of?
Yes, how are they being taken care of? When you talk about social distancing, when you talk about provision of water, soap, when you talk about provision of hand sanitizers. Yeah.
There was a conference on the by the Bureau of the African Union Heads of State and Government held last week. And President Kenyatta said one of the key outcomes of the meeting was an agreement to establish a continental anti-COVID fund, Africa Fund rather. And members of the Bureau agreed to immediately contribute $12.5 million as seed funding. The Bureau, according to Kenyatta, also agreed to contribute a further $44.5 million towards boosting the capacity of the African Union Center for Disease Control. And Kenya pledged 210 million shillings, which is $2 million, and $1 million to the fund and the Africa CDC, respectively.
Yeah. And I saw people already complaining, saying, look, we don't have money here.
Yeah, you're giving money to this
and
fund.
you're giving money to a fund. But it's important.
It's important to lend your corporation? No, City?
This one must be handled sensitively, because we have a clear understanding of where we actually are as a country. We also have a very clear understanding of what our leaders have been in the past. We don't have a clear path as to understanding whether they are different right now, whether they're going to act differently. But we have a situation that requires our concerted effort. It requires a positive outlook, not a denial of the truth, just a positive outlook amidst all this, so that we can actually ensure that we limit, if not reduce or eliminate, unnecessary deaths that can be caused by the COVID-19 and other ailments that haven't gone away simply because COVID has arrived on the scene.
Yep, true.
So the entire way of looking at things and thinking involves not really a complex, but just a straightforward understanding that the problems we have haven't gone away. The leaders we had last week are the same ones we have now.
Right.
The ones we had in December, the same ones we have now. Okay? And these particular leopards are not known to shed their spots. But that notwithstanding, what then do we do?
With what we have.
Yes, because this is those situations with, this is what we have, this is what we work with. And this situation that we're talking about endangers them as much as it endangers any other citizen in this country. In fact, one could argue them more so. Because if we say the virus has been imported, this class of individuals within the country are the ones who travel the most.
They are the ones who brought it.
They are the ones
who imported it.
Who actually get in touch with the people who come from other countries.
Yep.
So they are the ones who are most likely to actually meet this particular virus. They are as endangered as the next person.
This is true.
So, even as we look at this, every time I want to look at this and I want to point it, because this issue of the young man being shot, this thing has disturbed me.
Yeah.
Because I'm asking, what was he shooting at? Okay, the
Why
report
was-
is
why
that
was he shooting?
there's a report that there were some people, a gang of people who were refusing to sort of like adhere. But why are you using live bullets?
This is the thing. This is the thing.
Why shoot at
Why-
all?
why-
Why
fire
shoot at
at
all?
all?
Why?
Why?
Even tear gas, I still don't get it.
Why? What for?
Absolutely unnecessary.
What
in
for?
this case.
It's a painful one.
Very,
It's a
very
painful
sad
one. Another story. For Nyanza fishermen, it's the best and the worst of times. So, Kenyan fish and fish folk have been competing with imported fish from what they say is China. Now, with COVID-19 in China, there was a drop in the number of imported fish. So, times were good. And then now, because of the measures that have been imposed by this government of ours in our country, there's a reduced movement of fish from the Lake Victoria specifically. So the people who had tilapia and Nile perch are now facing hard times because there's reduced demand. So price of fish has gone down by between 20 and 50%. So the fisher folk are wondering, okay, sasa tufanya nini? But then some good news, those that deal with omena, price has shot up from about 1,400 to 1,400 per kilogram from 800.
What's the science behind that one? Should we all know fish? Is omena not fish?
It is. It is. I think they're talking about the largest species of fish.
I get it, but I mean,
Omena, the price of omena has gone up.
has gone up.
The price of
The price of
tilapia and
tilapia
Nile
has
perch
gone down.
has gone down. Demand for omena has gone up. Demand
yeah.
for tilapia and Nile perch has gone down.
The reason is because omena is cheaper.
Normally.
It is normally cheaper.
Okay.
It's considered one of the most nutritious meals any person whose economic status is a little deficient or a little challenged can afford.
Okay.
Okay? And it's also seasonal. It's not as though you get it in plenty throughout the year. So that's what people, if you are sort of like tightening your budget, that is what you would buy.
Go the omena way.
Yes. Now, the bigger species for the longest time, simply because the demand was high, the price just kept getting hiked.
Okay.
So now I wouldn't say it's going down, yes, but it's being rationalized. Because there's no demand, the prices have to go down. Yes, if you hope to sell it.
But why is the demand for tilapia going down and the demand for omena going up?
Because people don't have money, essentially.
There are two
right?
things here.
It's costing the same. 1 kilo right now. 1 kilo of omena is 1,400, and a kilo of tilapia has basically come down to 1,200. It was 1,400.
No one wants to buy that whole fish. Remember, omena,
It'll
there's
go further,
nothing.
right?
There's nothing you throw away.
And it'll go further.
You eat
More
the
people-
whole fish, everything.
Does it last longer?
Yes, it
Can
does.
talk
You can
about
dry it.
So it's
Well, even
It's
even
looking at
tilapia can
stocking.
last longer if it's dried.
Yep.
You've heard of what they call a bambla. That is actually dried fish. All right. So the truth of the matter is that any fish can be dried, but this particular fish, scientifically speaking, it has been known to work wonders with the cranium. It actually helps omena. That is, it actually forms a certain coating within the cranium, which people argue is very responsible for good brain growth. Yes, this is research that they said was carried out not here, but Southeast Asia, where people also eat a lot of fish, a lot of seafood, and they said it accounted for certain things and it helped with brain growth
With brain
and
growth.
development.
so good for children.
Oh, this thing is wonderful for children. I haven't talked about the benefit it has for your bones and what have you, but just for the brain. Now, and then there's the oils that you get in the bigger fish, omega-3. It's wonderful when it comes to boosting your immune system. Okay? This fish oil and this is something that has been known for years. It's not, remember, maybe when you get something called cod liver oil, foul-tasting stuff.
Terrible thing, man.
Yes, exactly.
God.
Oh,
They
but they
shredded
brought in
Saturday nights
they
in my
brought
house.
versions that now had an orange
Some
flavor
flavor,
and so forth. People would go to the places where you get fish to buy. Because of restricted travel, people aren't traveling. Okay? Now, it means, therefore, that people who actually are in that trade are also limited as to who they can sell to. It's that simple law of supply and demand. It's not really complicated. Yes. And remember, if you buy a fish, let's say you can have one fish, which is 1.2 kilos. 1.2 kilos of omena is a lot of omena.
Yeah, so if you bought one big fish, it would feed less people than a kilo
Yes,
of omena.
a kilo of
would.
omena is a lot of omena. For it to reach a kilo, it's a lot of it. Yes.
Got it. That makes sense now.
Yes.
So it's about volumes.
Oh, yes, it's a
looking at
lot of it.
The
It's a lot
plates,
of it.
The number of people to feed, the mouths to feed in a
Yes.
household. Now remember, everybody is staying at home.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at that from that angle.
Yes.
Okay.
Things like tilapia, things like...
Nile perch.
those are luxury fish. Those are high-end fish that you eat when you're doing well. Okay. They are.
Okay.
It's not as though people wake up every day to go and eat
You eat when
tilapia.
you're doing well.
When you're doing okay. And you're flush. If you're not, you eat omena.
All right.
Come back down to reality.
Yes, exactly.
12 minutes to 7 o'clock. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. As again, remember, you can download the standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store and just get to subscribe once, weekly, monthly or annually, and you get to access the standard wherever you are. Good morning.
Online, mobile, and on radio. www.spiceradio.co.ke 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Alright, okay. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Talking about what Africa has exported to another country. Structures called cemeteries.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
And it was taken to Cuba by African slaves with elements of Catholicism. So with bird sacrifices, Cuba's Santeria seek protection. The family of Emilia Montoya is the one that's being featured here. Sacrificed 4 white doves and 2 roosters, chanted in the African language Yoruba, and pounded a wooden staff rhythmically on the floor in a ceremony to protect Montoya from coronavirus. We are praying to protect. The small gathering in her Havana home appealed to their ancestors and honored Inle, the deity of health in Santeria, a ritual-filled Afro-Cuban religion. Montoya does not have the virus, though. Cuba has so far reported 170 cases. They are calling on these blessings upon her to keep her healthy, according to the nephew, Henry Rodrigo, who's 40 years old, leading the ceremony. But this ceremony isn't just for us. It's also for global health.
Wow. You want to combine some Nigerian juju with the
Everything.
with the Cuban voodoo.
Yes.
My goodness, you're going to have some sick
but
stuff.
But remember, the coronavirus is what's bringing these ceremonies to the fore.
To the fore, but they've always
But
been
they've always
there.
been They've
always been there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Now you want to combine the two? Some serious juju,
The
some
thing is,
serious
if-
potent
if-
juju.
If you're talking about an enterprise called Hope, people are going to look for it and they're going to seek it in places
Everywhere.
where yes, and in places they found it before. This didn't start yesterday.
Nope.
But a ray of hope. On top of that, the Sierra Leone overturns ban on pregnant schoolgirls. According to UNICEF, 40% of girls in Sierra Leone are married before their 18th birthday. And in many of these cases, they were pregnant. And the ruling had been, the law had been, once you get pregnant, no going back to school.
Stay there.
Yes.
That's it. Get married. End of story. Now, this has now been overturned. It means the fact that a young lady has gotten pregnant doesn't mean they cannot continue with their education.
And also, a lot of it's a West African practice per se. A lot that, because it's interesting that you said that they were married before they were 18 and they were pregnant at the same time. Usually, because that if a young girl got pregnant, that the parents would ask the young man to take responsibility for that girl, and the responsibility then meant marrying her. So you would find that she would be pregnant, but at the same time, the parents would force them. And
The
interestingly
expectation
enough,
is
both
you get
parents,
pregnant, get married.
on the side of the boy, on the side of the girl, you got her pregnant, you got yourself get married, right? So now this is not just overturning practice, but it's overturning also a cultural practice, in the sense that they say, you know what, this girl needs a lot more. Her education is important.
Yeah.
She was pregnant. It's not a death sentence. She can actually continue with her life and carry on with her studies, right? So it's turning over the practice that was there, but also getting parents and tradition to see that other things are necessary in life.
That percentage is high. 40%.
It's very high.
40% is
Yeah.
high. So we're talking about, basically, there's a lot of underage sex going on in this country.
And unprotected at that.
Unprotected and sanctioned, sort of.
By the way, consider this. If you want to know just how traditional they are, their parliament passed an abortion bill. The president refused to sign it. And it stayed that way. And it was considered to have been something progressive that would consider the endangerment of the mother who was expectant. The usual things that people who are progressive and say that abortion laws should be looked at in detail as to what they're actually doing, instead of just thinking they're killing someone or they're extinguishing life. But the truth of the matter is this. Whenever you have a situation such as the one in Sierra Leone, it simply tells you that there is a lot that country lacks. Let me explain what I mean. When you have a situation where one very fundamental part of that society is underprivileged or discriminated against deliberately, it tells you that that country is not very forward-looking.
No.
Because if you think of that percentage, can you look at the human resource that actually just goes to waste? When I say waste, I mean what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
People who could have done... pregnancy is not an illness.
No, it isn't.
No. It's something that can be sorted out. It's something that one can live with. Anyway.
It's interesting enough, Sierra Leone still remains one of the world's poorest countries. It's still in the category of LDCs, according to this index.
Throw 2 L's at it.
In this case, double LCD. So, I mean, and then looking at a ranking in terms of human development of 180 out of 187. And this can be attributed to so many things. I mean, they had an 11-year civil war, and then after they were just coming out of that, Ebola came and ravaged the country to pieces. And then after, I mean, it was just a whole mess of a lot of things, a lot of issue after issue. So it's interesting. With all of that taken into consideration, you would think rulings like this would never come into play because it's the least of their priorities, right? But with all of that, still making decisions
they've realized,
like this.
but
they've
consider,
understood.
you're a poor country, yes. You've been ravaged by a war, yes. But look at what it is that happens to a country when they do not actually focus on the one thing that is fundamental, ensuring that the citizenry are well looked after. What were all those wars about? It was like a pissing contest between two people.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was.
What were they fighting about?
It was power games.
Yes.
It's power games. And by the West, we must add.
We must add strongly, actually.
In Uganda, Museveni has now banned private vehicle use.
Sorry?
We were talking about matatus the other day. Now he says no vehicle at all.
Nobody is coming out.
In a televised national address on Monday evening, he announced a ban on private vehicle use, meaning anyone needing emergency medical care will need to ask a high-level district official for permission to leave their home. Market traders selling food will also have to leave close to their stalls for this period. Uganda has 33 confirmed cases. Patients like pregnant women in labor will have to first call an official before going out to seek medical help unless they can access a government vehicle, which are often hard to come by.
Let me ask a question, Eric.
Nobody gets out.
We've gotten it.
No vehicle at all.
We've understood
You want
it.
to go call chief.
What exactly are they doing for people who are underprivileged in this country?
Well, we heard Baba in Uganda. Mzee said yesterday that they're going to be distributing food to the poor families starting today. Today, the 1st of April, they will start sending food, and the district officers would be taking this responsibility to have that done. So they'll be going house to house. They will be the ones. Don't come to a collection point. No, we'll bring the food.
We'll bring the food to you.
Yeah,
social protection, just like this is happening in Rwanda as well. And Rwanda, the food distribution has started.
Yes.
And it's already ongoing. And even communities are contributing towards that and saying, okay, so if we hear that a neighbor has not received food yet, They contribute, they give the neighbor some food as we wait for the government food to arrive. So in Kigali, it's this, in Rwanda, rather, it's the entire country, this is happening a lot. And also enforcement of the stay-at-home order, big time. You're caught, you're taken to the stadium, you're made to sit there for an entire day.
Good Lord.
Arrest somebody in Gara, bring them to Nyeri Stadium, sit.
We'll see you
You
later.
sit there. Where did you want to go? Sit there. We'll talk
sit
in the
there.
evening. Until evening. Now go home.
You know, the issue of food distribution, if we read the report on page 20 of the Standard, it has also begun in Kenya. There are agencies who have begun. There's an organization that has actually managed to distribute families, according to this report, to 528 families yesterday. Okay, this is a joint initiative by GA Insurance and M Bank Foundation and Shamash Rugby Foundation.
Yeah.
So,
Citizen initiatives.
yes, there are citizen initiatives that are taking place through Rotary. The citizen initiatives that are taking place through other organizations. The citizen initiatives have actually
Have begun. What we've seen from the government is the Ministry of Devolution writing to the county government saying, give us your needs. And then we'll look at that and we'll organize how to distribute the food. So the government is still, doing what it does.
They're in discussion.
Yeah, they're in discussion. They're writing reports. They're considering.
They're going to import 4 million bags of yellow and white maize, though.
Yeah.
According to CS Moon.
Yeah. Going to the top of the hour, CT Muga. Today's proverb
Today's proverb
is
do
about
not call
forest.
the forest that shelters you a jungle.
Do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle. And this is, again, it was from Ghana.
It's Ashanti.
It's Ashanti.
It's a community. One of the things about proverbs and sayings, they also told you about a lot about that community, socioeconomic status,
Yep.
the sort of environment they lived in, and so forth.
Well, it's coming up to 7 o'clock. This is a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice.
All right, guys, the fog is very, very low on Mombasa Road this morning, all the way from just past Athi River. It looks like it's a mix of Hamatan dust, everything going on. So everybody has full lights on, not even fog lights this morning. And so we ask that you do this as well in that area. Be very careful. Fog very low today. Pedestrians are on the road today, not ready to pay the tripled and quadrupled fares in some areas. So that means that we do have more man traffic than road traffic today. Thika Road is opening up. Remember, right around Survey, it's closed. I'm not sure what road construction is going on there, but the footbridges are still being worked on. So Survey is closed, but apparently still you can get through without any issues. Getting into the CBD from any parts of the city will not be difficult today as other days. It still looks pretty good. If you run into any trouble anywhere, do let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter, or you can call us on 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching
Hoping
up,
you're in the
not
house
down.
or home safely.
This-
This is a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in Mombasa. You're listening to us on 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90. What?
Carry on.
Eldoret.
Eldoret.
97.7 in Malindi and 90.9 in Nyeri. We live stream the show on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke. Just as we were going into the break, CT, we're talking about the citizen initiatives that are coming up to support one another. The Kenyan spirit, basically, it doesn't even need to be called.
It's alive and well.
It's always alive.
It's alive and well. I mean, they've jumped onto it, and unfortunately, the government is trailing.
Always does.
Yes, always does. But this one instant,
Yeah.
with the formation of that Harambee committee,
Yeah.
okay, if I look at the individuals who are in that committee, I have hope.
Hope that what?
I have hope that this entire process will be better organized than the other plans we've had or initiatives we've seen in the past. The only thing that has worried me about this whole initiative is, even when I listen to these groups, they've left out the one group that is known to mobilize and to have clear logistical plans, the Red Cross.
Kenya Red Cross.
Yeah, I don't see them because they have a sterling record. And the outreach throughout the country is vast.
It's vast.
They are in literally every corner. There is no organization that has the number of ambulances right across the country like these people do. They own hotels. They own ambulances. They own
They have trained personnel across the country.
right across the country. They have volunteers right across the country.
Yeah.
So that's what has concerned me. Why they haven't been involved in this process?
Probably those something that didn't sit well with the people with the previous one. Remember the other one, the Kenyans for Kenya initiative?
Yes.
It was an initiative that was spearheaded by the Kenya Red Cross.
Yes.
And people contributed a lot of money to go towards alleviating hunger. Projects were instituted and implemented in especially Turkana. And maybe there were people who said, well, we didn't see like that was run well. Probably.
I don't
But
know.
still, the Kenya Red Cross is still active. The Kenya Red Cross still does a lot in the society.
Not only that.
And the Kenya Red Cross is anchored in law. I keep repeating that. It's not just, ragtag.
Some fly by
It's not a
night. And,
fly-by.
no, it isn't. But even significantly, did we hear complaints arising from the last initiative that we had? Did we have people saying that things? Did we actually get to read or hear of people or individuals or groups?
There were silent murmurs here and there. There were those that said, people who had contributed some foodstuff that was contributed did not end up getting to the beneficiaries, or some of the money that was contributed, and the plan was that you're going to ensure that Turkana never again gets to this point, and then the following year, there was still in that.
But
So-
that was a tall order.
So it didn't
Yeah,
work
it was
out.
difficult.
The plan was go and initiate an irrigation scheme in Turkana. Only a small portion was implemented. A vast piece of land was not cultivated. What went wrong? I think there are very many stories of exactly what did not work, which is not necessarily because of Kenya Red Cross.
Actually, you've gotten to the heart of the matter. Because if I look at initiatives that have taken place in many parts of the country, especially some of these far-flung ones that have been resource deficient for the longest time,
Yeah.
believe me, you need to go there to understand what deficiency means. Because the effort that you think will be sufficient is from a mindset of where there already exists structures within which things work. Some of those places, you have to set up the structure.
True.
And that will consume probably a lot of what that initiative had. Just setting up the structure, forget anything
Even in
else.
terms of time.
Yes.
Just
Getting there.
converting. Although there are projects already, we cannot say that there are projects that have been covered in the news over and over again. Irrigation projects that were started in Turkana that have converted small communities. People say, now we no longer have to worry about food. We are cultivating. Of course, the issues, the other bigger factors come in.
Yes. And they're
This
constant
is an irrigation
factors. Yes.
big irrigation project.
Yes.
Where do we take our produce?
Yes.
It needs to go to market. What's the route to market? Do we have roads? Do we have the infrastructure that goes to market? Do we have a properly organized market structure? If all those things are not aligned, it's not going to work.
No. It won't.
You talk about water. So yes, there's
There's a lake.
There's a lake.
There's
And
a
also
river.
There's a river. So they're using the river, or they're able to. But there's a lot that needs to work. If you talk about pumping the water from one area to the other, is it diesel? Is it electricity? Is it solar? What are we going to do? There's a lot that needs to be put in place to work.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you see things like food distribution, you just imagine that people are going to put something together and then voila, it ends up where it's supposed to be without
it
realizing
appears.
that a lot of logistics have to go into place. So then understanding that, however, for lots of people, the translation of such doesn't take place. It just is a matter of, I gave money, I expect to see people fed. I gave money and you said he was going to dig a borehole. I expect to see then people have adequate,
I
access
contributed
to water.
this once. Never ask me for more money.
And then on top of that, I contributed, and then unfortunately, I don't see it in the way in which I expected to see it. Chances are that if you would come back to an individual the following year and say that we needed something to be done, they're probably going to shut you down. Unfortunately, without understanding that a lot of what you've just said, Eric, so many things go into this process without an adequate understanding or comprehension of what the process takes. It would make sense that somebody would feel a bit frustrated if you would come back to them and ask them for more in terms
the
of
problem
contribution.
here is more one of communication.
Yes.
Yes.
You've nailed it.
Yes, because you may have done what you wanted, but the sort of changes that people talk about, those are brought about by government initiative, believe me. The National Irrigation Board has to be involved in this.
It must.
Oh,
be
for sure.
involved.
For the change. This
It
one
must
of
be involved.
those things are massive and they require some serious injection of cash. Believe me. The sort of harambes that we do to help alleviate famine and so forth, believe me, will not bring about
minimal change.
It's a drop. Believe me.
It
Minimal
does.
What
change.
you're doing is feed.
Yeah, you're feeding
And even
people.
then
and
just
even
for a
at that, you're
season.
feeding them for a short period of time.
Exactly.
Huge infrastructural areas that require the government to come in. We have a development authority that
Yes.
caters for that region.
Yes.
Then you've got the irrigation board.
Yes.
Those ones have to play ball.
Yes.
If they don't, this thing is not going
What you'll
nowhere.
be doing is plugging into an initiative that probably exists.
Yeah.
Okay. For instance, if you want to say with coronavirus, you are not going to be able to function well if you do not work with existing government health structures.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't matter how good your plan is. If you're not working with those people, it won't go
It won't
anywhere.
work.
Because the government structures are the ones which have the largest reach in any county
Yeah.
in this country. Now, think of any county, think of its enormity, and think of its needs. When you contribute, it's a lot to you because you're sacrificing. But in the face of where it's going, unfortunately, it may just be a drop in the ocean. So your expectations may not actually be anchored in the reality of what actually required to be done. So this communication has to be two-pronged. This is the reality of what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is the reality of what is needed. So this is the reality of what we're going to achieve. So you anchor your expectations on reality, so you know. Remember, part of the reason why we're holding the government accountable when it comes to employment is the promises they made about employing 500,000 people every year. And when you talk about millions, it means that hasn't been done.
Yep.
Again, we come to that crossroads. There's something called communication, quite important.
Tell us.
It's
As
just
it is.
talking and
That's
saying.
it is.
Just keep talking.
This, yes.
There was very good communication, especially for the Kenyans for Kenya initiative. Very good communication prior. It rallied people together.
It did.
People were willing to contribute whatever they could.
And people did.
Individuals, corporates, everybody came together and they, did a lot of money. Now, communication afterwards was also important.
It was crucial.
It was also very important.
And this
Let's
is
say
the
so.
reason I
This is
think-
what we've done after
Yeah.
flagging off the trucks that were carrying foodstuff from here, and saying now we're going onto the ground and what we're going to do. It was important that we continue with that. Maybe the people who are running the project felt if we dedicated money onto communication, Kenyans are going to ask us, tuliwapatia pesa communicate.
Yeah, but I think it
Tuliwapatia
is
pesa.
important
That
because
money could go on to feeding people.
I think the lack of it is what led to the apathy that we saw the following year.
Yeah.
Because then people didn't have an idea of what really then happened, and they couldn't see the results of what it is that they contributed. So when they were asked to come the next time, it was unfortunate. When they were asked to come the next time and contribute, it was paltry in terms of what then was received, at that point. So now look, here we see a situation playing out with COVID now that then people are asked to contribute
again.
I mean, you're in the supermarket and you're hearing, over the intercom, people are saying, well, as you do your shopping, remember that there is a section where you can donate for those people who will not be able to get access to food because of the current situation.
Yeah.
And people are kind of, lackadaisical towards it. And they're like, all right, well, okay, maybe we shall, maybe we shan't. But in this case, then I think the communication, would need to be from the get-go, be very clear of where it's going to. And then the communication thereafter to say that this is what we collected, this is what we donated, so that you can have clear. And I think there are lots of these already running, like you talked about, CT. There are very many individuals who've come together, but in terms of one concerted effort, everybody at once, like what we've seen the Red Cross having done in the past, we haven't seen something like this.
What also happens,
and it could have been that it has contributed, the previous attempts and what we saw has contributed to the not so loud voice now.
In an African setting, an African will tell you, do you know how many relatives I have?
Yeah.
That I'm feeding just because I didn't tell you.
Yes,
That's
do
why you don't
you have
know.
any idea?
You don't know.
Yes, exactly. So these are the people you want me to help. Don't they have?
I'm
don't
at a
they,
point where I don't have access.
Yes,
I don't have.
exactly. So these are the people. Don't they have relatives? And it is a valid question. You see, because all help, even if it's extending it to your relatives, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're citizens of this country.
You're
and they
helping
also
people
lack.
who are in need.
That's really it. It doesn't matter whether they're your relatives or not, but they need.
They need.
Yes. Communication is important in all these things.
This fund would be a good thing. And of course, we wait to hear what they tell us. Jane Karuku, the chairperson, and her board members. It's important we hear what they have in plan, what they have, in store for us. They've been given the mandate to, 1, mobilize resources, and 2, manage those resources. Now, this is the bit that we all want to know. What do you want to do? So you want us to contribute money, and then what do you want to do?
What do you want to do with that?
Are you going to give that money to the Ministry of Devolution? So they buy import maize and then they start distributing that maize. What are we going to do? What are you going to do?
What's your plan?
It would be great. That was my. If it would be great if at this point that they actually have a plan.
I think
A
they're
plan
working
of
on
action. Yeah, that's the thing.
They should
Maybe
be working
these
on
are
it
the
now.
minutes. This is the time period in which that plan should be worked on. Because with a plan, then you're able to execute so quickly and say, okay, this is what then we've been able to do. Have all your communication strategies in place. Have all your rollout logistics ready to go so that you know what it is.
And you
Yeah.
see, when you're
Will
talking
not
of
cause any kind of
communication, I noticed that list
problems.
of people, they have someone who works who is the head of a media house.
Rashid
Waruru.
Waruru.
Yes. So you cannot say the media is not represented here.
It is.
And this is a veteran. This is someone who's been in the media for the longest time. So he would know the lay of the land, and he would also know.
He can
what needs-
mobilize the media houses
He
because
can mobilize
he is
the
the Media Owners Association. So probably that's why he's also here. So bringing in the communication aspect. But these are all the others are many bank managers. James Mwangi, Joshua Oigara, Jeremy Awori, bank.
It's all right.
So you're talking about what?
Banks. So that's where we keep our money if we have it. And that's where we also keep our debts.
These are the same guys who have not given us relief on paying our debt, our loans.
These are the same guys who keep telling us about the billions they're making.
And so then come, let's have a chat. Come, let's reason together.
Same guys who are telling us they make the billions, but they're the same guys who haven't moved an inch.
They expect us to repay our loans this month.
Oh, yes, they do. They haven't moved an inch. The president it could be like the president was talking to himself. Yes, what he
president
said
was
made
having a
sense.
chat
Yeah.
What he said was good. It's like, essentially he was saying, let everybody do their bit. Banks, you can do your bit.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Yep.
You can do your bit, everybody can do. Banks haven't moved.
Only one bank,
one?
Stanbic Bank, released a statement the other day. They've said you can. I'm going to read you that statement shortly.
Please read.
What they have done, what they've said is given you a holiday. Anybody who's got a loan with us, we've given you a repayment holiday.
Well, that bank of yours is a good bank.
One bank.
Some of the banks that I have keep telling me,
In fact, they're reminding you.
3% penalty.
What's up?
yes, not only do they remind you, then they tell you this is supposed to be a service. They're telling you, okay, working hours have been shortened. We're now going to close at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, then they also tell you, also, you don't have to come to the bank.
You can
pay your-
pay.
Yes, you can pay. You see, it's nothing has changed. I could pay via my phone even before
Even
the
before COVID.
coronavirus.
Yes.
But now,
Reminding you.
Daily, you're being told you can pay.
to pay your bills.
Yes, bwana.
Don't let Corona hold you
Pay
back.
your
Yes,
loan.
don't let it hold you back.
Yeah.
Just pay.
Just pay. Let's take a short break, take a look at weather, and then we come back with the conversation. We're talking about the Harambee spirit of Kenyans. Now we've been called upon to contribute. Various organizations, individuals have come together and said, let's rally together and help those in need. The government has done the same, created a fund. What is it that we can do as a society to help one another? Good morning, 17 minutes after 7.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Taking a look into Nairobi right now, fog still quite low in certain parts of the city, mostly cloudy conditions at 17 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 16. In Nyeri at 16 degrees, it's partly cloudy through the day. Expect showers in the afternoon, highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's partly cloudy in Nakuru at 16 degrees. We're going to see highs of 27 and lows of 14. In Eldoret at 14 degrees, clear skies today, but partly cloudy conditions to follow later then, with highs of 25 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, it's clear skies at 19 degrees, at 30 the high, with 19 the low. In Malindi this morning, it's partly cloudy. Rain showers expected in the afternoon then, with highs of 33 and lows of 27. In Mombasa, it's partly cloudy this morning, likely to continue this way through the day. Highs of 33 and lows of 27. In Kampala this morning, it's partly cloudy at 21 degrees. Expect some rain in the afternoon, with highs of 28 and lows of 21. In Dar es Salaam, the fog is low as well at 26 degrees. Partly cloudy conditions entering into thunderstorms later on, with highs of 32 and lows of 26. And then in Johannesburg, it's clear skies, mostly at 16 degrees. Showers expected later, with highs of 22 and lows of 10. And finally, in Lagos this morning, light thunderstorms taking place after early showers, likely to continue through the day, with highs of 34 and lows of 26.
Spice up your life.
At 21 minutes after 7 o'clock. This is
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Released on the 29th of March. That's what, 3 days ago?
Mornings done right.
3 days ago, Stanbic Bank wishes to announce the loan holiday for SMEs and personal banking customers to cushion them against the economic disruptions caused by the coronavirus COVID disease. disease. The loan holiday will be effective from the 1st of April 2020, and it will run up to 3 months and will apply to all SMEs loan facilities. The Chief Executive Officer, Charles Mudiwa, said they recognize that we are collectively affected by COVID-19 and we strive to put in place contingency plans to mitigate against disruption. The reality is that SMEs are going through a tough period. We must keep moving. We must keep Kenya moving. So all you need to do is, if you want to restructure this loan, because there are those that may want to continue paying, but if you want to get this tax holiday, all you are required to do is just send an SMS to a number 22208 reading yes RH with the number that you've registered for the loan, or you reply to an email that was sent to you.
Wow.
You just reply with.
So you don't even have
You don't even need to reply and say, "Oh, you understand my Just reply with yes RH. That's it. Get a tax loan holiday for 3 months.
Wow.
This is a good thing from that commercial bank. We wait for the other commercial banks to follow suit, to feel sufficiently philanthropic. Back to this fund, talking about sufficient philanthropy. The seed fund for the fund that was created by President Uhuru Kenyatta to mobilize money for COVID emergency response. Seed money is the president's 30% generous contribution from his salary. The deputy
30.
president's.
It was more, wasn't it?
It was 30.
Oh, from
He's
30%.
Yeah, he's taking a 30% pay cut.
He's taking 30% pay cut. Not 75 like Kenya Airways.
No, his was 80 actually.
That's what I thought.
The president's is 80%. It's the ministers who are 30.
Yeah, I was going to
Yes.
say, I know for sure that he said more than 50%. Okay.
The president was 80%. The ministers are 30%. And
PSs
the
around that
PSs
same
are
amount.
20%. So ministers and CSs 30%.
What does it amount to?
Did
PSs 20%.
you do the math?
It was actually covered the other day in the news. Some amount plus the governors plus the speakers. So that goes into the seed fund. Basically, they have already done their harambe into the kitty. That's for the rest of us. I still have issues with why in the private sector employers are not having a conversation with their employees. They're basically looking at their books and they're calling their employees and telling them, go home. This is what you're going to get. Either you're going home on unpaid leave or you're going home on paid
Mandatory
leave.
yeah.
But this is how much we can afford to pay you. So this is how much you shall take. And it's no negotiation. We are the employers of public officers. We are not having this. Why are we having a negotiation with our employees? Why are they the ones to tell us, you know what? I think I'll take a 30% pay cut.
And I'm going to be at home anyway. So, don't call me.
I have loans.
It's a tired story, that one.
Should be a time where we as the employers of public servants are saying, look, times are tough. We need to do, this is what you're going to do. All of you, everybody who gets paid from the public coffers,
Needs to step
you shall
up,
take
yeah.
something, a pay cut. Start even with 2% for the lowly paid, up to 80% to the president, but everybody. And there's no negotiation. Why are we negotiating with our employees?
I actually am in agreement with you.
Who's negotiating with us?
Yeah, if you put it in that perspective, where you say, you actually, these folks work for us.
Yeah.
So,
If you
it's-
want a national contribution, don't let anybody off the hook.
Yeah,
Let everybody contribute.
let everybody do that.
Even in the private sector, tell your employees, this card is what you're going to do. You can kick a fuss, you can complain, but this is a problem that is facing all of us. So everyone is contributing.
Put in money here.
Everyone is contributing.
And then now let's look at what is it that we expect this fund to do. So if we're talking about mobilizing, so Uganda and Rwanda have started feeding their people.
They're people, yeah.
It's been said, it's been murmured in various quarters that one of the reasons why we are not hearing that is because, can we afford really? For how long can we afford to feed our people? So we shall contribute, fine. We'll do a harambe, haba na haba. I'll give my 10 bob, you give your 10. It shall become 10 billion. Let's feed the people in need. This is what this fund should be doing.
Yeah, I think one thing that would be very critical here is because we have so many mushrooming pockets of like distribution areas all over the country. It would be good for a combined effort here to take place, because then you have an individual here, you have an organization here, you have a caucus of other organizations who are trying to do something, and I think it's necessary to kind of put it all together and say, obviously, we go much further and spread much wider when we're working together. And you see that government then and private sector can come together and say, this is something that we all need to do together, then how can we go about it? The plan, of course, needs to be put in place before that.
Yeah.
But I think that, we saw pictures, videos all over the weekend, people packing up thousands and thousands of boxes of rice and other goods to give to other people, to give to people who are less advantaged. And this is before or without waiting for an announcement from the committee as
The
it
people
were.
need to eat today.
Yes, that's the thing.
They do.
So
They
now
do.
at this point, with the work that's already been going on, how can then, even with this new fund management that the president has put together, how can they plug into
they
the
plug
already
in?
existing
Yes.
mechanisms that are going on, and saying, let's have a concerted effort and do this
You
thing
see,
right?
knowing the government as we do, they're probably trying to figure this out, but they're not telling you.
Yeah.
And this is where they always go wrong. They do not say it. Because they know how many people there are in the low rent areas.
They
within-
know.
They know. They know people who are beyond a certain age and don't have an income in the country. They have those numbers. Now, what is being done is wonderful, but we need to graduate it to a stage where
Yeah.
if you come on this area, food is distributed at
this
this
point.
time. Thank you. And this point, and this point, and this point.
It's
Or
like
And
just
at
go to
this
the
time.
community and find
Yeah.
out. So who is working here? Are they trusted? Do they have a good network? For example, Shofco in Kibra, they're already working. And Peter Ngumi, the chairman of Kenya Pipeline, was telling us, we're going to distribute these hand sanitizers through Shofco
Yes.
to take to the people of Kibra, because they already are in the community. They've been working in this community. They've been working with the community. Do the same. Use, like you keep saying, CT, the infrastructure already exists.
It exists.
All communities are organized.
They're organized.
Just plug into what is working there.
Well, here's an example of what's going on in the US, for example. We know across the US just that they have what they call soup kitchens. Soup kitchens then are for the less advantaged, for the homeless. You can come in any time of the day and you will get a hot meal. And in then some cases, you have extended soup kitchens whereby they deal with your domestic help. So you can have a hot meal, you can go take a bath, and then
A place to sleep even.
yeah,
Yeah.
they'll give you somewhere to sleep, and then you go off on your business or whatever that may be for the day. Now, in this case, with COVID and what's going on, a lot of children are out of school. Now, because they're out of school, this means that two important meals that they would depend on the school system for getting during the day, they now don't get. So what has happened is that the governments within the federal system, governments have now plugged in with the soup kitchen mentality, which I was talking about now, plug into already existing mechanisms. Governments have plugged in now with the soup kitchens to make sure that they're now distributing 2 meals a day for those children and their families who would not get a meal by virtue of the fact that they're not in school. And this has been working brilliantly. So now when you have celebrities or whomever is contributing, or even just people in the community contributing, they're not contributing to some ambiguous body somewhere.
Yep.
They're contributing to a mechanism that has already been set in
is
place,
there.
and they can see directly where their contribution is going. Children are being fed, the soup kitchens are more vibrant,
Yep.
and then you have this going all through. Whereas somebody would miss out something that they would normally get by virtue of them not being in school. They've been able to plug in, and it has worked beautifully because the mechanism is already in place, and they can follow it, and it gives all kinds of transparency. There's no question that a child who was in school every day now is going to get breakfast and lunch, and then they'll get their dinner because then they will be at home ordinarily. So you see, it works brilliantly if you just are aware of what is available and then plan and play towards that particular thing.
Just let it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what
It can.
exactly is this fund going to help with? Is it social protection? Is it also going to look at, if you go across the counties and expecting the numbers to rise, and now you're being told prepare secondary schools and use those boarding schools that can be used as facilities? Are we talking about providing food for those who will be staying in those facilities? Are we talking about helping in the communities in those areas to manage? What exactly is the money going to be used for?
Actually, how much money are they hoping to raise? Let's start that for. Let's just start there, because if you want to feed the whole nation, let's ask, how many of these people are there?
How many people need to be fed?
Yes, how many, and where are they found?
Yeah.
Then you go to the mechanisms, because if you have a group and you don't have a target as to how much you want to raise, so what are you then doing? Or you just expect? You just can't have this group just sort of like that, and we'll receive what we have and then what we do. No.
Every committee must have a budget. To quantify the budget here to 3 million.
Yes.
Umefika 1.2. Tunaomba mtu ongezee ifike 2 million.
Yes.
You must have something like that. Probably
And
that's the work that they are doing now.
That's what I think they're
I
probably doing.
expect that
And negotiating even with the county system and saying, guys, we want to help, but what are you guys giving? Because this is what you guys have.
Yep.
The government has told you this, you don't need to do this, so this money can be freed up.
This money,
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
Something
okay.
else.
So how are you guys planning to do this? You see, when you have a body that can oversee, because if you leave it just to the counties, things will go wrong in a way that you can't even imagine.
But can they oversee what they have not contributed, what they have not raised? Because on the other hand, you can't go to counties and tell them, you guys, we looked at your budget and we're seeing you can reallocate now.
This is what we have.
It's what we have. It's what we have.
You'll take it or
27
take
minutes
it.
to 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and the conversation continues.
Fog still low on Mombasa Road, but it doesn't really affect traffic per se. It just means that we ask you to be extra cautious when driving down this road, even more so now that there's not a lot of traffic, because it means that you will be going quicker. But know that you need to be protected where that is concerned because of the weather conditions this morning. It's running pretty good on Thika Road, Superhighway today. No traffic. We had a survey that was closed off for a bit there for them to continue with the transport. But apart from that, we seem to be doing all right. Nothing major happening in any part of the city at the moment. If there is, should you see anything, Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Spice FM, Nyeri.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Spice up
Mature,
yourself
intelligent
wherever
talk
you are.
every
This
morning.
is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Ndu Oko and CT Muga. We're looking at social protection. Remember, from 7 o'clock, we'll be talking to Wanjiru Gekonyo, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. She'll be calling in, and we'll have this conversation on social protection from an organization that has been doing social accountability. Then we expect to get a lot of insights on how the state of our country, basically, when it comes to preparing for such eventualities. We're talking about a fund that was established by President Uhuru Kenyatta the day before yesterday. It's to be chaired by Kenya Breweries Managing Director Jane Karuko. It has members including Jeremiah Wari, CEO of Barclays. We've got the CEO and Chairman of Equity Bank, James Mwangi. We've got the CEO of Kenya Commercial Bank. We've got the Chairman of the Kenya Tourism Federation, Mohamed Hersi, and others. This board has basically been mandated to mobilize resources to respond to this emergency, both locally and internationally. We're expecting them to tell us exactly how they want to go about this. We want them to tell us also what do they want. What is your mandate as you understand it? Are you raising money so that you can feed people? Are you raising money so that you can buy masks and gloves?
Well,
Are you what exactly? What do you want the money for?
according to State House Communications, the seed capital of the fund would be taken from the exchequer. So now this is what we had seen before in terms of the voluntary pay cuts that people are taking.
Yep.
So you have a base fund that comes about from that. We still don't know, and maybe this is the phase that we are in right now, that they're planning and saying other money that comes in, this is where we're going to get it from. If there's a contribution from the Kenyan populace at large, is there an M-Pesa number? Is there an account where you send this money? Are you going to cut it off at source if you work for the public sector? Or is there going to be some kind of negotiation between now government and private sector when it says that individuals want to give a certain amount or are asked to give a certain 5% kind of thing? So then it would be necessary thereafter to hear, if this is the collection that is going on, then what do you intend to do with it? And how do you intend to do that? Because I tell you one thing, in a place, in the situation in which we are in right now with this whole COVID and everybody unsure about what's happening tomorrow, the last thing you want to do is to ask Kenyans to contribute to something with their hard-earned money and then bungle it, and then have a situation where either people are not fed or there's no transparency as per what happens with their money. That is the last thing you want to do, because then you will throw people into a situation that will be very, very difficult to get out of.
You don't want to hear people saying, hii chakula ilifika tu pale na haijatufikia.
No.
Or we have not seen anything like that here. Or now this the food that came, we heard that it was coming from Nairobi as 2 kilograms of rice. It came to us as half a kilo
Of beans.
of beans.
Less than, and not even what you were expecting in the first place.
So the good thing is that the people who are in charge of these are serious people. They are people who have managed billion shilling companies and human resource in the number of hundreds. So these are people who already know, and also logistics. Talk about Kenya breweries and understanding logistics. This is something that Jen Karuku does know. Her job is to ensure that beer leaves Ruaraka and beer goes to Turkana, and beer is being drunk in Turkana, and those bottles have to come back, right?
What was she before became CEO of?
She's worked in various companies in the country. Also as CEO, I'm gonna give you her resume shortly.
Think of it. Why I ask is because of this. The experience that people have come in very handy at such a time.
Yes.
Because what someone has done previously in whatever docket or in whatever sector, the amalgam of all that becomes very, very, very useful now.
Yes.
Because apart from just being a multi-sectoral approach and multidisciplinary, let me say it's multi-ability.
It's true.
Because the larger the exposure that someone has, the more able they will be to deal with such a situation. Because this one is unique in this sense. It affects more people than we've ever had to deal with. Because if you're talking about, say, a lockdown which isn't planned for, then you're talking about chaos.
Yep. So just last couple of years, right? She was the head of support services at Telecom Kenya. Then she was the president of the African Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. This is the one, the Kofi Annan led Green Revolution for Africa. And then she went into Kenya Breweries. She has sat in boards. She is a trustee of the USIU. She is the president of the Alliance for Green Africa Revolution, yes. Board member for Global Sustainability Index. The board member, Barclays Bank. Board member, Barclays. Board member, East African Breweries. She went into, head of support. So she has that resume in terms of working for big organizations.
Very useful. And also, it's a sort of resume that gives you confidence.
Yes.
Because these the institutions she's worked for aren't just going to throw these things at you because they like you. You must have they
must have a proven track record.
Yes,
they must look at you and feel that they trust you.
Yes, what speaks for you is the achievements that you've made and your success.
Yep.
And how well you've handled
And
yourself.
how well you handled.
Yes. And that's why you'll find, and this is where it gets biblical, to him or her who has more shall be added.
Yes. More shall be added.
Yes.
To whom a lot is given,
yes.
a lot is also expected.
But it's something we need to talk about here.
Yeah.
That is maize supply. Because something doesn't add up when you look at maize. The supply of it, the consumption of it. One hand, the producers who are mainly in the North Rift say they have an abundance of maize supply. Yet we still want to import.
No, I mean the order has been given. I mean, what did we talk about? What did we say? Is that
Yes,
Mohammed
yes,
says
yes,
that
yes.
4 million.
That I've read.
bags
That I've read.
will
But
come in, yeah.
but there's someone we never mentioned. A group of people, millers.
Yes.
They are very fundamental players in this particular game, and I'm calling it a game deliberately because they more or less play around with the supply and demand of this thing.
Yep.
And the millers in this country are not many, but they are huge because it is to them that the maize gets to before it becomes what we consume on a daily basis. Okay? You know, even when we have an oversupply of maize, have you ever heard of a situation where we give our cows maize? I mean, there are people who do that, but it's not something we hear. But now we are being told yellow maize will be predominantly for cows. Who says?
What do you mean, who says?
CS Munya said.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But he's saying as though he's speaking it from what I'm reading. It's as though yellow maize can only feed cows. And I'm saying, who says? That's what I'm saying. Who says?
Predominantly, he said predominantly, didn't he? Right? It's for making the feeds.
I've understood him perfectly. There's a point I'm going to here. When we've had bumper crops and we do not know, supposedly do not know what to do with it, and we're being told it's rotting. All these aflatoxin stories that we keep hearing.
Yeah.
When is it that we've heard that, this oversupply, if it went into this direction,
Let's convert it into
feed,
into
because
feed.
we know how to preserve it, how to ensure, because most feed that you buy is something that has been stored, stocked, it's been there for some time. Do you hear this story now? In the absence of something that is articulated and explained with clarity so that we understand what's happening, doubts will still linger. I talk about maize and food because the Galana Kulalu, that irrigation scheme that went south, okay, and continued going south, didn't even try to go southwest, just went south.
South.
Okay? Did we ever hear of anybody being arrested?
No.
For what?
Okay. That is an excellent question.
Arrested why?
Because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do, and that is why the Israeli ambassador not only resigned but left the country.
But you'll be told there has been no report, no investigation has been conducted, or anybody who has
Yes,
been
exactly.
indicted.
That's the point. That no questions have been asked, no investigation has been conducted for something that was supposed to be
why do
giving
you
you
want an arrest?
400,000 per year, and then did a poultry, and then it's now lying, literally
Because there was
lying in states.
There's no criminality. Things just didn't work out. Okay.
It's not when you don't do that which you were supposed to do, then
No. In this country, we deal with things. Is it criminal? Is it not? Is it illegal? Is it not? How did anyone break the law? Bas. That's how we deal in this country. Those things of that you are given a job, you're supposed to. If you are given a job,
it should be actually dealt
If you're
with
given a
different
job-
levels of criminality.
if you are given a job to move this piece of paper from here to the end of that table,
Now look at
Right?
something like now.
and you push the paper from here,
Yesterday-
it goes to the middle of the table. Have you committed any wrong?
Yesterday, we employed the tools of a paintbrush and a paint to paint this picturesque a scene where things would look the way they were supposed to be. Now look at a project like Kulalu, for example,
Yep.
and look at what now the country would face right now, where you're looking at reserves, or where you're looking at something that's producing so brilliantly that then would be able to feed the people of Kenya in a state of crisis or not. Right? Something like that was producing, that should have produced in terms of multiplicity across board. What would it not be able to do right now?
Actually, if Eric was talking about the criminal element being brought out, it's right there. When you deny the country its availability to provide food security to its citizenry,
Yep.
that is crime against humanity. It's not
A
just
basic right
Yes.
of being able to feed.
Yes, it's not just it's not your garden variety crime.
This one is serious.
This is serious
People
full
could
scale.
die
This is
on your
card
watch.
carrying membership of crime. This one is top of the list.
Where is the crime?
The crime is in when you deny people sustenance, you're actually killing them.
They will tell you it hasn't been denied them.
It has.
It's in the
If
in the pipeline.
Till
no.
when? Things
No,
that
no,
look,
no.
this pipe has, Shabi, it has
No, no,
two
no,
and
no,
sides.
that and that
no.
and that is where we go
Eric
back.
is playing devil's advocate, rightly so.
Yes.
And that's why we go back to the
and it
beginning.
should be responded to because when a project is set in place, it's given timelines. There is no project that doesn't have timelines. We do this here, by this time we do this. And if you go by the timeline of that particular project, shouldn't we have been harvesting now?
We should have.
Precisely.
We should have moved very many points ahead.
Yes.
Right?
Even harvesting would have been. And you see, when you're irrigating, you don't just look for the variety that requires 12 months. You look for a variety that probably requires 6 or 4 months before you can harvest. They exist. Kari will tell you this. So what I'm saying is that by the project collapsing, all this was not just put in abeyance, but it came to a halt. If it came to a halt, it means food that could have been available is now not available. If we face a famine, people who are involved in that project have direct responsibility, because this was what we were trying to forestall, a situation like, because we have famine every year in this country, we understand it. This is what we're trying to forestall. And in not ensuring this project didn't get to fruition, you, in essence, have contributed to whatever calamity that particular famine will bring.
I know. When such projects are being formulated and being put down on paper, the people who are doing that are always protecting themselves. Unless we say that this is a performance contracting job, that you've been given the job of managing the Galana Kulalu project, and this is exactly what is expected of you, failure to which this is exactly what shall happen, then you'll always keep playing this game. Because CT, I'm sure if you went to the papers, they'll tell you, if you went it on paper, you'll find that these are the milestones that we're supposed to hit, subject to very many other things falling in line. So if you haven't hit a milestone, I'll point to you to add something that didn't fall in line.
Eric,
we were supposed to have had a bumper. We were supposed
Actually-
to have
Because
a
of
lot
rain,
of
then
rain.
rain.
So
I'm
the
going
water
to take
should
this
have hit.
discussion along the lines Eric is taking,
Water should
and
have
he
hit
is
this
right.
level.
Eric, you are right. But specifically about this particular project,
Yeah.
let us look at some of the things that went wrong, right? One, and it's clear if you look at it, somebody was sabotaging it. A dam was built in the wrong place. How can a dam be built in the wrong place when you knew very well where you wanted that dam? Because a dam has to follow a river. You can't build a dam where there's no water.
You'll find that is a subjective argument.
It is
There will be
subjective.
somebody who says there were very many reports that were conducted and said this is a place to put up that dam.
My friend, do you know what happened? Silt
schools of-
blocked the channels.
Yeah.
Now, we have a history with these things, and that's why there are even companies whose job is just to clear the silt. Like on this lovely river, the Tana River that goes through right up to the sea. The people who just do that. Again, some consultants had instructions that went south, left, right. This one, if you were to look at the nitty-gritties of it, this is the clearest form of sabotage. These are experts. You know, everyone who worked here was an expert. People who know what they're supposed to do. How can they get certain things which are so obvious so wrong? How? And they're experts. How?
That's why I'm telling you. I think we have too many. We had too many heads in this project. There's a certain group of experts that said this is a place to put up a dam. Another group of experts that were saying this is the place to put up a dam. Now, depending on who had the more social capital and political capital, that's where the dam went. Now, the group that wanted the dam elsewhere is saying, we told you so. And it's pointing the fingers. And the other guys are like, but you know, we had done all our, we had checked. It was fine. Too many cooks spoiling the broth.
I will leave that argument where it is and go back to the information we have in the papers about the maize that we're importing will not be less expensive, more expensive than one we have locally. We need to follow this. Where is this maize coming from? What is their annual production of maize? How often do they have excess maize? What do they do with it? And then you'll get to how much does this maize actually cost in this place. Forget this thing that we're being told it costs this. What does it actually cost?
What does it cost?
What does it actually cost?
Yeah.
When they have a bumper harvest, what do they mean? It means they have excess. What do they normally do with that excess? Because we are clearly not buying from a country that has just what it needs and can't spare. No.
Obviously, they
have a
surplus.
lot to spare.
They have surplus. But then the question would be, why is it so hard then? Because we talked about this in this country. There's surplus. In the North Rift, there are farmers who are saying, we've harvested.
We've been reading this.
We've harvested. We have maize available. Because let's try, if we can translate, we can put this to what is happening right now. Right now, not tomorrow or in the future. Right now, there are those who have gone to farm, they've planted, they've harvested. It is available in the country.
And they're citizens of this
and
country.
they're citizens of this country. You would think, if we're going to again exist in the ideal situation just for a few minutes, you would think that it would be the priority of the government
to protect its citizens.
to protect its citizens
Yes.
by buying from them
Yes,
to feed the same country.
precisely.
Why take from outside? Why? And we have seen this. We have seen this in administration after administration, and it seems to be very clear. Until we are told the reserves are empty, and then you have farmers crying
Our
and
farmers are
saying
not protected.
they're not protected.
They're not
Nobody is
protected.
buying from them, and it looks to me that this would be a clear situation where the government would be able to say, "All right, we have farmers who've harvested. Let's buy from them. Let's put some money in their pocket."
It's not complicated, this
It's
one,
really
is it?
not complicated. This one you don't even have to have. You just have to have a little bit of common sense sprinkled with a bit of logic. That's all you need here. And to say that all we need is to be able to buy from these farmers, let them continue their trade, and we have a rolling system where we continue to buy from them, so that they can essentially feed the country.
There
In
was
terms
a
of
back
capacity,
and forth
they have
between
it.
government and farmers. Government saying this is how much you can afford to buy this maize at, and farmers saying this is how much we want to sell our maize at. Now, that's another conversation that we need to have.
But
I am
Eric,
convinced.
Eric,
I am
that
convi-
conversation was had.
Let me
Remember
tell
the
you, I am
inputs that farmers have.
convinced
Where do the inputs normally come from?
Look,
government
Eric,
sources.
there is no.
Why not just
there is
do
nothing-
contract farming?
There is nothing that
From
cannot
the very
be sorted
beginning,
out.
as you go into planting this maize, let's agree how much you're going to sell this maize at.
Okay. Even when we talk about, did we not see just slightly under 2 years ago when it was finally agreed, when farmers said, okay, fine, we'll take it. And then even to pay them became an issue. If it was you, what would you not have issues with in
Why
the
would
future?
you have to pay the farmer?
Why would you do it again tomorrow? Because a year later, you've still not been paid. Even that bad price they talk about, oh yeah, it's okay. Pay us that bad price.
And
Even
yet,
that one is problem.
you're
again.
being told we've bought maize. That maize that
Come
we now
on.
have, it was paid for. So where did this money where did we get this money to pay for this maize?
Corruption.
Now, this brings you now to the maize millers again. And in this country, there's one particular maize miller who more or less has a near monopoly. Mombasa maize millers. So you could argue this particular entity or enterprise more or less controls what happens in this country where maize is concerned. They can say, look, if I was a business person and there's a place where I can get maize that is going to be dumped, meaning I'm getting it at next to nothing.
Very fast.
I would certainly think of getting it from a purely business perspective.
And you
But
know,
there's a larger harm. You are sabotaging the economy.
and you're sabotaging your people. Look here, if I on this fund, here's an opportunity for them. Again, a brilliant opportunity proposed here, given to us by what COVID has to offer here, right? This fund here to say, this could be the poster child for us to then see how actually this economy could survive by virtue of the contribution of its own people. The contribution of its own farmers, for example, the contribution of the people within the agricultural sector who say, look, guys, we've done this for 20, 30, 40 years. We know what it takes. It's possible for us to supply. Just make the environment conducive for us. I take a huge chunk of the contribution in terms of food. I take it from your homegrown millers. I take it from your homegrown farmers right here to say, actually, you know what? They were able to provide for this fund. They could damn well provide for the whole country. It's possible. It can be done. And again, here is another opportunity that is provided with this COVID thing that we're seeing for you to see how, yes, this country could actually run.
I'm not seeing it.
Why?
It helps to wash your eyes in the morning.
It is showing me exactly how badly this country has been run.
Exactly. This is the thing.
I am not seeing how best it can be run.
creates an
I am still not
opportunity-
seeing how best.
Creates an
How
opportunity for you
badly-
to see how
Eric,
things
Eric,
actually
Eric,
run.
Eric,
Japan have a group of citizens and taxpayers called rice farmers. Japan, the production of rice in
I like that
Japan,
you call them taxpayers.
yes,
Yeah.
it's very expensive. They can't actually compete with Malaysia, with India, with China. They can't compete. But the Japanese government protects those farmers. You are going to buy that rice and they're going to subsidize it for you so that you buy it.
will
And
buy
that
it.
rice which is coming from where it's coming from is expensive
expensive.
Very
to
expensive.
death
Yeah.
because they tax the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Ours will do the complete opposite, man.
We trade.
No.
Oh.
Our farmers need protection.
Here's
Our
an
business
opportunity to
people
show
need
how it
protection.
can work.
You know, where corruption comes in, you see those inputs, there's corruption there, and that's why it's very expensive.
Yes, it is.
Growing
I agree.
of our food is very expensive. We're
Because
talking
of
about
this same corruption.
Same
the
corruption.
government comes in with a brilliant idea on paper. All right, we are going to buy bulk fertilizer and we're going to distribute it to our farmers. Bulk fertilizer, distribute to our farmers. There is corruption in that chain. So that means that by the time the fertilizer is getting to the farmer, which is in a delayed process, the fertilizer is very expensive. Number three, the fertilizer has been diverted. So you are finding that government fertilizer is being sold by some private individuals somewhere in the North Rift.
We continue to make this thing so scientific.
Corruption,
and there's really
corruption
reason for it.
everywhere.
They were bringing in milk and eggs from Uganda the other day and chicken even, until they shut this thing down.
Yeah.
Why? Why were they able to do that? And why were you and I ready to buy the milk and eggs that came in from Uganda?
Cheap.
It was cheaper. Why are they able to do that? Because the cost of production, Uganda has been switched on in some point where they realize, okay, input can actually be made cheaper so that people can actually sell at a cheaper rate, so that the people can buy something at an affordable rate. It's a science, my God.
When they even have an
figured this one
oversupply of
out.
bananas, they give cows.
They
bananas,
give them to eat.
Yes.
They figured this one out, that you put in less, you're able to get more, and that more can go into your pocket. My goodness, epiphany. They figured that out. Even more, they said, we can even sell to our neighboring country. And the people in that country also realize, wow,
It's
the eggs
cheaper.
and chicken and milk coming from Uganda is cheaper. Why would you buy from here then? And then you continue to let it in and let it in and let it in. And then we say, yeah, well, it's because of the cartels. And you can do something about it. That's the thing, here. This corruption comes in, but it's not as if it shackles you to the point that you can't do something about it. If it shackles anything, it shackles the will. It doesn't shackle your hands and feet.
Whose hands and feet? The government or
everybody. Everybody who's involved in the process.
everybody who's involved in the process is a corrupt person. They're enjoying it.
This is what I'm saying.
Eric, in the next hour, even as we have these calls, I want to focus on what we would see if what we're discussing didn't exist.
If it didn't exist.
How
If it
different
didn't
would it
exist.
be?
How different it would just be. Let's start with the maize. If the maize farmer had input that was reasonably priced and was well bargained for, so that when it arrived, it got to him at the best possible price. It means that whatever they were producing would cost less. It's not complicated. It means anybody could afford to buy maize meal. If
Everybody would buy it.
everyone would be able to eat. That's what it means.
Yeah.
So the issue of a 2 kilogram or 1 kilogram packet of maize costing half the earth, it could
Doesn't come in.
It doesn't come in at all.
No.
Okay. Tell us, remind us today's proverb.
Today's proverb: do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle.
In this country, Kenya is a jungle.
Yep, that is certainly one way of looking
Kenya
at it.
is a jungle. Basically, what you're saying is do not insult the hand that feeds you.
I'm saying do not bite the hand that feeds you.
Do not bite the hand that feeds you.
Yes.
Do not call
Do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle. Okay.
Yep.
And this is from
This
Ghana.
is an Ashanti saying.
It's an Ashanti saying. It's
Yes,
an
the
Ashanti
Ashantis are
proverb.
from Ghana. Those who, yes, that's where they come from. And the areas they come from, reportedly, are heavily forested, and many of them derive whatever economic activity they have.
They don't live in the jungle.
No, they don't. But they derive their livelihood from the forests that are part and parcel of the environment.
Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, the live stream is up 0719012600. If you'd like to ask any questions, we'll be having our guest host this morning on the line. This is Wanjiru Gekonyo, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. Good morning, 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life.
All righty, nothing much.
102.5.
Traffic Police are on many roads this morning, making sure that everything is in order as far as public service vehicles are concerned. Apart from that, not much traffic. It's moving very, very smoothly. Fog still low on certain parts of Mombasa Road, so you want to be very careful if you're applying that route this morning. Seems to be blocked around Kaloleni, Makongeni, and the entire Jogo Road for some reason, and this is because of water on the streets that could be sewage at this point. So people are trying to deal with that this morning and move. Apart from that, not much to report. If you do see something, let us know. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur.
How are you doing? Where are you? If you're in Malindi, 97.7, good morning to you.
A man
in
who
Nyeri,
believes in
90.9,
punching up,
96.7 in
not down.
Eldoret, Nakuru,
This is the
96.0,
Situation
102.5 Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa. You're here in Nairobi and its environs, 94.4. Good morning, and how are you doing today? Being the first day of April 2020. Listen, today is April Fool's Day on any other ordinary day. But for this year, April Fool's Day has been cancelled because
Is that a joke?
no made-up prank could match.
I mean, there's nothing to be stupid about. This coronavirus,
Nothing could match
Serious.
what's going on right now. Nothing, right? So nothing to joke about. Everything is serious. But let's talk about what our country would look like if we didn't have corruption. CT, take your paintbrush. There you go.
I've got it. Let's continue where I left off with the issue of food. If, let's take for instance, that inputs that go into our food production, let's just say they were reduced by, say, a factor of, say, 50%, because though the profiteers and the carpetbaggers and the plunderers who we refer to as cartels, these aren't people who have limits. They don't think of making 10%. Then they begin
want to make everything.
They want to make everything 200, 300 going onwards percent.
Yeah.
If you reduce the current cost just by 50%, what it means is, if a 2 kilogram packet of unga costs you 200 bob, it will cost you 100. If it costs you 100, it will cost you 50. And if it wasn't packaged, then it means that all you went to was the local posho mill. Then what that would mean is that you'd be probably buying a kilo at maybe 30 bob. Now, if somebody earns 300 shillings a day, it means that this is someone who can buy 3 kilos with 100 shillings, and then they have 200 shillings remaining to feed them, to buy other things with. As we speak now, that 300 shillings, you'll be able to buy one packet of unga, which I think costs around 200 shillings, and that's just about it. Then you have 100 shillings.
It ends there.
That 100 shillings for you to think and to think about what it is.
Everything else that needs to come.
Everything. Transport is now your legs, so it's at no cost. You just need to feed the engine, which is yourself, and then you can continue walking. But if you leave it there, if you look at even things that are produced in the country, and you look at the taxes we understand because it's part of what the government needs to keep running. But if, again, the cartels didn't exist, then some of these crazy things that we keep seeing would also not occur. For instance, you would be able to have a system where, one, power, which we have in excess, actually doesn't keep costing more. Despite the excess, it would actually cost less. Now, the moment power costs less, it means production cost is at, say, again, I'm using 50% as a margin. You know, that automatically reduces the cost of everything that requires power to be processed, and that is literally everything that we have. So in that one move, suddenly everything becomes affordable. So the money you have is suddenly stronger because it can buy you more. But if these things are a constant, even if every year you're given more money and you're told you've been paid more, what they're actually doing is reducing the value of your money, because in theory, it looks on paper, it looks like it's more, but it buys less. The power of any currency is in what it can purchase, not the amount that's given to you. So there are things that if they are done, the government can make the money it's supposed to make. But the people can actually enjoy living here because the cost of living will be lower. And once the cost of living is lower, then life becomes easily manageable. If, for instance, you were able to understand that the oil that we buy, and especially now with the constantly reducing value of a barrel of oil, and if the cartels, once again, were completely removed from the equation, what we even pay at the pump should not be what we're paying right now. It shouldn't be 100 shillings per litre or 102, 100, whatever it is. It should be infinitely less. Now, you'll be given some figures. The clever will tell you, well, you know what we're using right now? We are now...
It was purchased many months ago.
Yes, and when it was purchased many months ago, long story. But with every long story that we have, there will be an alternate story. Where we will tell you, but you know something? This could have been done because it's a possibility. It's not a theory, it's just a fact. But we've chosen the route that is more expensive. We've chosen a route that is augmented by other costs that don't necessarily have to be there. If you reduce costs of fuel, you reduce cost of transportation. If you reduce cost of transportation, the value, the cost added to the goods that they transport will also be reduced.
Will also be reduced, absolutely.
It is not an impossibility for everyone to be able to afford to live in this country. They can. And they don't need a salary increase every year on Labor Day. No. It's just a question of certain tools being used, certain measures being taken, and then life suddenly becomes affordable. That is just a glimpse. We'll be going into the picture as we continue. A glimpse of how life can be easy, simple, and straightforward, simply by doing what needs to be done. I'll end by saying healthcare can be afforded. Instead of having a situation where you are told that KEMSA has supplied some drug, but it has a shelf life of 1 month because it's about to expire. So you end up having a situation where there are tons and tons of drugs that you can't use because they've expired. There are people who produce generic drugs that are reputable and at a fraction of the cost of the ones that some people may prefer to buy. When things are rationalized, healthcare becomes affordable. Anyone can afford to fall sick because you will be taken care of. And so someone doesn't have to juggle between treating themselves, feeding themselves, looking after the children. All this juggling that fills the mind of an ordinary citizen is reduced because they are aware that these things can actually happen because they can. Yes.
It's actually possible for these things to happen. At the end of the day, it's possible for these things to happen. It's possible for us to put in place mechanisms that work. And a lot of times we want to make the comparison and you say, all right, to other countries in the world, they're able to do this because they have, smaller populations and things like this. But I say, no, at the end of the day, it's the plan. If you have a plan in place, it can take care of one person, it can take care of 1 million, because the plan essentially is what enables you to be able to do this. And I mean, look at countries that have been able to get it done. They didn't just, pull out something out of a hat and say, okay, let's go ahead and do this. They put a plan in place and they said, okay, these are the measures that we're going to take. This is the direction in which we are going to go. And you can then apply it, whether you have 10 people or whether you have 10 million. If you apply the same thing, it makes it then available for you to do, regardless of what you have.
Regardless of what you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's some measures, though, that, if you look at the measures that have been taken, and I keep going back into that oil supply, right? Yes, the price of oil has fallen dramatically globally. The price of oil should have fallen in Kenya, but you don't expect that it falls because Saudi Arabia has dropped the price of oil today, that tomorrow at the pump it's going to be lower, right?
No.
It's going to get there. One of the things that I really like about the kind of regime that we have in petroleum supply for the country, one, open tender system. One company is mandated by the all marketers to import the oil for the country, and you go and bid, and the one with the lowest bid is the one that supplies, right? So it means that it's competitive bidding. It's done that. The one company that is supplying meets the demand of the market. Gone are the days when you used to go to a petrol station and there's no fuel, or that you start seeing SMSs flying around, mafuta inaisha, because some company has decided to hoard the product that they have because they expect tomorrow, because oil prices have gone up today, they expect to sell it at a higher price
tomorrow.
All those things we have a steady supply of oil in the country. We have a steady supply at one constant purchase price. If you're in Nairobi, it doesn't matter what petrol station you walk into, unless that petrol station decides to have a promotion and make their oil cheaper, you know how much they're going to sell it for. By the 15th, I'm sure oil is going to go down. On the 15th, it's going to go down dramatically because of the impact of what has happened internationally in the last 30 days. I like such stability. And that is what I see a government doing now, going forward and going beyond that and seeing how can we extend this stability so that the market also feels the benefits of this stability. It's important now we look at where are the bottlenecks that we have in the supply chain, in that entire value chain. What else is happening?
Well, I think there's an awareness of what those bottlenecks are. I wouldn't say that those who operate the system don't know where the problems are. I think they are well aware. I think it all comes then back down to how willing are we to remove the blocks that are actually stopping this thing
And
from
make
coming
things
to
work.
fruition and make it work. There's an unwillingness to take it out. And the city said something the other day, because for us to realize that, you know what, you can actually benefit when everybody else benefits. In
You
fact,
can do that.
it might sound ridiculous, but it could be that you would actually benefit more, infinitely more, when everybody else benefits, as opposed to 1 or 2, 3 people benefiting and you have the majority of the people suffering. It actually doesn't do anything for you. And I think there's this myopic view that has been held for the longest time that, you know what, if I can get the most for myself, then I'm actually fine. Actually, you're not. Few people benefiting are not doing a good.
You know, the concept of what you call social capital is nestled on the idea that you're bringing out, because the biggest protection that you can have within a community are the people within the community, not a guard, not a fence, not a wall. Traditionally, you found people who were economically better off always ensured that people around them benefited from what
Absolutely.
they had. It was a point, not just of pride, but they took it upon themselves. And it was part of a value system. And you found that even this person was just an ordinary member of the society. And you know why also? They got involved in what everybody else did. They were actually part and parcel. But when you have this modern way of looking at things, where you are set apart, you're different. You see? Now that social construct has embedded in it time bombs and booby traps.
Yeah.
Because it's what perpetrates what we keep discussing. You see, like right now, people are thinking of war chests for 2022.
Yes.
And the only way you build this thing is through corruption.
Unfortunately.
Yes. And also, you see, we've also engineered mentally our electorate to believe that it's a time for reaping, as in a time for receiving as much bribes as you possibly can, handouts.
It's a time for money.
Exactly. Now, look at this vicious cycle. Yesterday I said, stop taking the money. Politicians will always tell you when you talk to them, you know, people ask for money all the time, so we need more money. All right. So stop. No one is asking you for money.
This thing of kula kwa nani, kura kwa so and so, let's stop it.
Stop it. Just put a halt.
Do not kula from anybody.
Don't.
Just stop it.
Don't.
Now we are speaking a good language.
Yes. So now, tell us what you're doing with the money, because you keep saying you're giving it out.
No, we don't want
No
it.
one is asking.
We're not
No one is
taking
asking.
it.
They
We're
don't
not
want
taking
it.
it.
Okay.
You'll survive.
This is what
It
you're supposed to
changes
do.
the conversation completely, because
Yes.
now you're coming to tell me, okay, what are your ideas?
Yes.
Our
I'm not
discussion-
asking you for money. I don't want you to give me 5 bob. Not
Because
50.
guess what? The rest of the 364 days, somehow I survive,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not taking that money
I'm
from
not
you.
taking this.
I actually want to see what this thing is that you say you're going to do, how it's going to roll out. Let's do it.
That's our conversation with you. And that's why you are so called your Mheshimiwa. So let's talk about what you're supposed to do and what you've done so far. I don't want money from you. Don't even contribute to the funeral. You can come.
In fact, it's even better because nowadays they're saying that somebody dies, we bury tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
So that story
So we
gone.
don't. That story we don't even need.
No
it
expenses
anymore.
now.
Wedding, if people want to do wedding, 15 of you gather around, finish doing what
And
you're
you
doing,
give
come and
yourself
go.
space.
Right. So all those things. If we're living in the times in which we're living now, all of these elements for which you would have been contributing, they have been removed. The path is clear. Now tell us, how are you going to go about this job? That's what we're saying.
Indeed. It's 8:15. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. After this short break, taking a look at the weather, we'll be speaking to Wanjiru Gekonyo, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. What shall we be discussing? Social protection. Good morning.
Okay, let's see how things may have changed in Nairobi. It's still at around 18 degrees. The fog is quite low today. Still foggy conditions for most of the morning. Highs of 27 and lows of 16 then through the day. In Nyeri at 18 degrees, it's partly cloudy. Some thunderstorms expected later with highs of 25 and lows of 14. In Nakuru at 17 degrees, it's highs of 27 and lows of 14 today. In Eldoret at 16 degrees, it's mostly sunny. Highs of 25. In Kisumu, clear skies and sunny through the morning. 22 degrees currently, highs of 30 and lows of 19. It's 30 degrees in Malindi and mostly cloudy. The showers expected in the afternoon, then highs of 33 and lows of 28. 29 degrees and mostly sunny in Mombasa this morning. Some showers expected later with highs of 33 and lows of 27. In Kampala at 23 degrees, it's going to be mostly cloudy for parts of the morning and then into some showers in the afternoon, highs of 27 and lows of 21. And in Dar es Salaam at 28 degrees, it's partly cloudy, thunderstorms expected in the afternoon, then with highs of 32 and lows of 26. In Johannesburg at 16 degrees, it's mostly sunny. 22 degrees the high and lows of 11 with showers in the afternoon. Thunderstorms in Lagos right now at 26 degrees, likely to go through most of the day with showers rounding out the day with highs of 34 and lows of 25.
Spice and everything nice. Alright, okay.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up
This
yourself.
morning, as we continue in Kenya's biggest conversation, having a look at what is going on in the country, we're joined right now by Wanjiro Gikonyo, who is the executive director of TISA. And as we look at social protection this morning, Wanjiro, good morning.
Morning, Drew. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Keeping safe.
Hi to CT and Eric as well.
Hello, Wajiro.
We are well, and how are you?
Very well. And yes, Drew, we are keeping safe,
Fantastic.
doing the social distancing and all that it pertains.
Hence, we are talking to you
That's why
from
you're-
far away this
you're
morning as
keeping your
opposed to
distance
in the
from us.
space.
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm saying hence social distance practice, hence you're far away from the studio this morning.
Yes, we've been working from the house for the last 2 weeks. We are one of the institutions that's able to do that. But what this means really is that apart from the regular check-ins, you can sleep until midday, wake up and work for 4 hours, or watch movies and then do your work at night. As long as when you're checking in, you hit your deliverables.
Right.
So yeah, it's a different experience. It's a different experience. But we're the fortunate ones. There are people out there who can't afford to stop because they live hand to mouth.
Right.
And they need to work to earn the daily bread. And that's the reality. So yeah, and what can we do to assist? Government is doing its part, flailing in some aspects, doing reasonably well in others, but a pandemic of this size really calls upon all of us to take initiative, to show solidarity. So it's a challenging time.
With what you feel is the heartbeat right now and what's going on in the country, what needs to be done, Wajiro?
Wow, we're in uncharted territory. And I don't think there's necessarily expertise or the perfect way to do this.
Yeah.
But what needs to happen, part of that is happening. We're getting regular informed updates from the CS of Health.
Yes.
Kind of sober updates.
Yeah.
They need a lot more information. And so part of what is happening now is you're finding stakeholders, civil society and other actors demanding, okay, good, you've set up the basic, but we need to know which populations are vulnerable in terms of health, in terms of economic issues.
Yeah.
When you're talking about distributing food, we want to know, okay, so how is this being targeted to the vulnerable? We don't want cartels to regroup around COVID. So part of what needs to be done is already happening, which is the regular, informed, sober communication, but more information needs to come out.
Right.
The other thing that needs to happen, of course, is, the economy. It's amazing that we stop, and it's mind-boggling that, as we stop, of course, we stop generating tax revenues.
Yeah.
We don't have an idea of how big the hit is, but it's significant.
Yeah.
So, of course, the protections need to come in.
Yeah.
And so far, we've heard the voice of organized groups really making the case for big business, for registered businesses in terms of tax incentives and those kind of cuts. But we haven't heard the incentives or the cushions for the unregistered. 80%, Kenya has the largest informal trading population in the world. And this is linked to inequality. This is also linked to how difficult it is as an informal trader to get into the formal system because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Access to trading space is very punitive, and that's, lots of cartels around markets or stores.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this huge informal population from hawkers that, sometimes are rendered totally illegal. Sometimes hawkers are then allowed to trade. Mama Mboga, who shows up and trades 3 times a week. So we have this large population that really, and informal trade contributes about 23%. There was the National Economic Report produced by Kipra estimated in 2017 that, they contribute about 23% to our GDP.
Yeah.
But they are then unseen because they are not registered. They don't have government protection. They don't have access to services in many cases. So there are a lot of tax, justice issues there because they do pay cess, for instance.
Yes.
But they used to pay cess. Cess is then on and off. I don't know whether it's been on right now. They have some licensing that they get into and get off to. There's been a lot of instability, but they do pay amounts to trade.
Mm-hmm.
They do pay like protection money.
Yes.
Yet they don't have access to basic services. Government is not supposed to be taxing people who don't have access to space, access to water, access to garbage collection. So this is a sector that already pays out of pocket a lot, earns subsistence level, and then pays out quite a lot just to earn that subsistence. So when you tell these people, okay, now go home, that's not an option. And the numbers are big. In Nairobi, we are not quite sure what the numbers are. Nairobi County was estimating, I think, something like 1.7 million in their first CIDP. Mm-hmm. But because they are unregistered, it's very hard to estimate. It could be as high as 2.3 million.
Yeah.
So there's this large group of Kenyans in urban areas that work at subsistence level that cannot afford to go home. So we need to, look at their costs and remove those costs. When you're talking about any licenses that are supposed to be levied, any kind of charges by the county, they pay for refuse management, they pay rents, remove all those costs, let water be accessible, so those basics have to happen. We haven't heard that. And then, of course, there are conversations about VAT, looking at essential goods and making sure all those are zero rated, so that in the first instance, people can survive. We are now dealing with survival. Yeah.
Does the government, this is the question here. We've been grappling with the idea back and forth. Things have been thrown there into what would be a circus here, into the ring, and said, does the government have the capacity to put these services in the hands of people then who can't afford to be away from work every day?
I think it's not just government. And part of the problem and the other thing that has to happen is government has to adopt a human rights-based approach. human rights-based approach, one, recognizes the inherent dignity of every person
Yep.
and the inherent right of each person to be involved in governance processes and their own governance processes. So, for instance, instead of clobbering people around a curfew, you do education. You then have dialogue with people. So what will it take for people to get home by a certain time? And you then design the measures in line with, the reality on the ground. So first of all, government needs to listen, needs to dialogue, and then recognize. And I know Magafuli may be, I think, a little bit too blasé because, the idea of leaving everything running and everything open, including schools, I think is a bit too much. But he's right in saying the solution rests with us because we are the ones who have to change our behavior. We are the ones who have to monitor ourselves and look out for our neighbor. Government cannot do that for, the entire population of people. So the approach that I feel government needs to take, for instance, on health management, is there are community systems. There's a community-based health system that has been in place since, I was looking at literature this week, since around 2006. It's been part of government strategy. But it doesn't get the support it needs. It's given lip service. Donors are the ones who then come and put in money and train community health workers. Community health workers work up to the household. So, if you have, I was talking to one of the people responsible yesterday, and she was saying that they have access to 10,000 households because there are 5,000 health workers, and they are able to reach the 10,000 households in informal settlements directly. So you have an army of soldiers who do this work anyway. They support expectant mothers. They support. They look out for, infant kind of care. So a mother's given birth, make sure she's going for the vaccinations. They look after patients who are on HIV treatment. They look out for the elderly. They visit them. They take them the medicine. They do the sensitization. This exists. And all these people are attached to the health facility, the dispensary, which is the level 1, the lowest level of health service delivery. Now, the problem, let me phrase my contributions proactively because we're in a crisis. It's not time to blame. The opportunity and what needs to happen is the support needs to be given at level 1 and at community level. It was very disconcerting last week that clinicians at this level 1 in Nairobi were threatening to go slow. In fact, it was, I think, last week but one, because they were saying they don't have protective gear. Now, they need to be activated. They need to be given the facilities so that we can have that front line of defense doing the sensitization, doing the monitoring. They're able to know this person has been told to isolate. They're not isolating, or there's a case here, requires immediate. So they work with the community. They are not coercive. They are not top-down. It's really more of what we've been discussing about self-governance mechanisms. These are community members who volunteer, who then come out and become a front line of defense, but they need to be supported. So the problem with the national response is likely to be centrism, because that's what happens when
and it's looking at a very big picture from another side.
Exactly.
As opposed to allowing also solutions to come from ground up.
Right.
It's interesting that you mentioned this. Yesterday, there's a clinic that had to be shut down in Ngara because somebody had tested positive, and this person had come into contact. Had come into contact with a nurse, and this nurse also was working with, of course, her colleagues there, and everybody in that facility has been put in quarantine. So a facility that was serving a population in Ngara has now been closed until fumigation happens, but the staff that were working there have been put in quarantine.
And taking into consideration that other people still come in to be treated for other ailments in that same facility.
They require the services. In fact, they were not coming to seek COVID-19 related services. They were coming for their normal services. Mothers coming for prenatal care and such.
Right. And the presumption is people will get infected, and the first port of call is the local dispensary. So they need to be prepared for that. So it's good that there was some immediate kind of action taken, but it shouldn't be offline for that long. So the main issue that the clinicians had raised is lack of what they are calling protective equipment.
Yeah.
And this is, it's like the new gold, because you're looking at America, they're also talking about protective equipment because there's not enough of it. So, number one, I think there's an absolute, we don't have an idea, because right now our messaging from government is not telling us how much protective equipment we need, but we can get a sense it's not enough. But then also, where is it going? I've heard seen online stories that people who are able are self-isolating and getting health provision, driven to them or taken to them because they're able to pay for it.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. All healthcare workers have to be in the public system. I think there should be mandatory, even private need to,
go quasi-public.
That nationalize all healthcare services. That has to happen. What we're seeing with this pandemic is we haven't yet seen the worst of it. The numbers are going to burgeon. And the main thing is, where are the healthcare workers? Are they protected? And are they working at, the lower level? Is there good communication around that? Yeah.
At the same time, Shiro, this whole conversation is exposing what the counties should have done and they're not doing. Because some of these things, like looking at level 1 facilities and all, that is the preserve of the county government, and they've already been sensitized. Come on, put together your facilities, ensure that your workers are trained and they're given everything that they require. So as long as, yes, we have national response committee, which also has a governor who is the chair of the health committee in the Council of Governors, it means that, for example, in Nairobi, in all the counties across the country, the governors are not thinking about the primary health care.
I'm a big defender of devolution, Eric, and of course Nairobi is really painful because of this transfer of functions, but you're absolutely right. Most of the governors have betrayed the objects of devolution, which was to decentralize, and they have been funding healthcare at county level. So, for instance, in Nairobi, a lot of funding has been going to Mama Lucy and, other higher county level facilities, which are essentially referral. And the investment at the primary level has not been taking place, including even stocking of drugs has been very ad hoc and not up to scratch. So yes, we have a big challenge. And I think what COVID is going to teach us, and the lesson we need to quickly take, is that we need to redress that wrong. The money needs to go down. And I'll just say that part of the problem we have with the way we've been doing development, national to county, is this idea that we need large, visible infrastructure projects that are politically very attractive and will win me votes. So money has been going into the wrong places. Actually, if you look at, government had a 2017 public expenditure review report, and they were saying the problem with the healthcare sector is one, the money being put in is not enough. Kenya is at 7% of the budget, 2% of GDP. They need to be at double that. Then the priorities are wrong. So one, the money is not enough. Then when it comes in, it's put in the wrong place. It's put into larger infrastructure as opposed to doing the level 1, level 2 support. And then it's inefficient. And then there's corruption. So these are the things that, this is the soft underbelly of Kenya's response, that we are expecting a lot from a sector that's been underfunded. So what can we do? We need to push government to make sure the first line of support is there so that we don't have a centralized response, because that's not going to, you need a level of very strong central kind of management, but you also need this local level response. But then also we are ourselves. It's not time to point fingers and all much as we're very unhappy with government. Government has really let us down in very many regards, national and county. Also ask what can we do. So it's time for solidarity.
Why do you say it isn't time for pointing fingers? When is it a better time to point fingers?
City, yes, we can point fingers, but the crisis is such that we need to act. And I think it's something you were saying yesterday, that government has failed, so we need to ask ourselves, what can we do?
Yep.
So it's more of, let's not waste time pointing fingers. Maybe 5% is to say, okay, this hasn't happened.
But where we are where we are, we need to do something to ensure that we deal with this. 1-0. We've lost 1-0.
I'm sure she'll be back.
She'll be back. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We've been talking to Wanjiru Gekonyo, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. It's a conversation that we've already started. We are having this conversation on a daily basis. This is talking about social protection and what also we can do as citizens of the country to ensure that we together fight COVID-19. It's 22 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Okay, still the same. We see the roads are generally open today. Not much of an issue concerning traffic. Yes, of course, if it changes, do let us know. But for now, most of the roads you're going to get there in record time and hopefully without any issues. But you will not overspeed or will not break any laws because that will get you in trouble, unfortunately. Fog still quite low on Mombasa Road. That is what we see today. It'll open up later into showers, but we'll see how that goes. Spice of MKE is how you can reach us on Twitter or give us a call. Let us know what you see and we'll just make sure it keeps moving. I think so.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Is a regular on this show, so of course we'll be talking to her throughout this season, looking at what interventions the government can put in place and what we as citizens can do to deal with COVID-19. It's a big one. It's fighting us. We've got to fight back. And if we don't do it together, then we surely shall perish.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for a lot of collective measures, collective stance to be taken in terms of what we can do, as opposed to saying, well, here is my finger pointing exercise and you are the one who needs to be in this one. I think in this here we have a unique opportunity to see that everybody has a role to play. Here there's something that everybody can do, and you can't be the weakest. You can't be the weakest link here. You know, am I doing what? Yeah, no one.
You've got to do everything that you can. Corporate organizations, the public sector, the private sector, we are seeing a lot of work being done in the private sector. For instance, the hotel industry. We've been talking about hotel and tourism. Among the hardest hit is the local hotel industry. I mean, they were the first to be hit. Immediately, even before anything else, the first thing that CS Mutahi Kagwe did when he started giving us these briefings, even before announcing the first case, he said, we are stopping any meeting of an international nature. What does that mean? No conferences in Nairobi. The MICE business is big in the country. Hit. So hotels had to scale back on their revenues. They had to scale back on their expenditure. Many hotels have closed down. We have seen very many of them announcing their closures. Yesterday, Pride Inn in Mombasa announced that they are, going into a temporary closure for that period. But they said that our workers will still be getting a pay. Going into zero revenue, but you're still paying your staff. Kenya Airways has done the same. Going into zero revenue, but you're still saying we cannot fire our staff because we understand what we are in, all of us together. We have a personal corporate responsibility to do that. We also have seen Hemingway's Collection, which operates Hemingway's in Nairobi, in Watamu, in the Mara, announcing on Monday that they were also going into temporary closure of their Nairobi and Mara properties. You can imagine closing in Mara during this period when you're looking towards getting into the high season. And also, they said, we also do not want to fire any of our staff. We are going to keep them on a payroll for some time. We are now joined on the line by Ross Evans, who is the operations director of the Hemingway's Collection. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Eric.
Welcome to the Situation Room. In the room, we have CT Muga and Nduoko as well.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
So, Ross, we saw an announcement by the Hemingway's hotels saying that you're closing 2 of your properties.
Yeah, that's right, Eric. It's really with a heavy heart that we have to make some tough decisions. But the management team, we've been working on effectively what is a survival plan for our group as we deal with this COVID-19 challenge.
Yep.
And within that, we thought it was the best move for us was to close our property in Nairobi for 2 months of April and May, and also to close in the Mara for 2 months as well. We are keeping our property in Watamu open for the time being, as long as the government allows us to continue to operate. Obviously within Ministry of Health guidance and protocols. And we're hoping to look after a few resident clients over the Easter period who might need a bit of a break.
So Watamu is still operating. Why did you decide to keep that one open?
We have some existing bookings. As I said, over Easter, it's obviously very low occupancy. But as much as possible, we essentially would like to take any revenue we can get. I think, as you mentioned in your intro, we have worked with our staff over the last 10 days in terms of our survival plan. So we've not announced any redundancies, and we are keeping our staff on as much as we can.
Yep.
And this is a commitment for 3 months. And we see what happens, in the next days and weeks to come as to whether there are signs of dealing with this crisis. And any signs of what the recovery, when it comes, might look like.
Yeah.
We will then obviously adopt our strategy and adapt our strategy accordingly.
You talked about some bookings, and that's why you have not gone ahead with closure of the last property. Are these local bookings, Ross?
Yes, they are. Obviously, with the ban on international visitors, these are all resident market bookings. We have fantastic support from the local market in Watamu since we reopened after refurbishment 2 years ago. And this resident business will certainly help us cope with the challenge of the international travel restrictions. Certainly in Watamu, I think in Nairobi, the key for us is initially, hopefully, the return of the corporate market, at least again for resident meetings. And in Olseki in the Mara, that's typically a different challenge because it's much more of an international clientele. And as Eric said again in the intro, we are moving into high season from June onwards. And we effectively forecast that the high season for 2020 is lost.
Yeah.
We may see some green shoots towards the end in September, October, depending on when and how travel restrictions can be lifted.
Yeah.
But it's really a challenge for us in the industry and as Kenya to plan for how we recover.
Right.
I think in the past, when Kenya has dealt with big challenges, maybe none like this challenge, but those we have dealt with in terms of security threats, political violence.
Yeah.
We have been recovering as an individual country, and in this time, we will be competing on a global basis on a recovery.
Speaking
So
of
you've
recovery,
got
Right. Yesterday, we had a chat with the CS for tourism, Najib Balala, and he talked about the fact that recovery is going to mean looking to the local market for sustenance, especially for the tourism sector. Do you see this then as an opportunity to be able to then tap out the potential that the local market then has to offer in the months that will come when COVID actually is a thing of the past?
Certainly, our first point of call will be the local market, but our business model is based on high-end leisure travel, supplemented in Nairobi and Watamu with some resident business, and also some meetings and events business. So many businesses like ours will rely on the recovery of the international market, but certainly in the initial recovery, it will be hopefully resident support that we get in our properties, which will help us through the sort of low months in the short to medium term. And then it's really a challenge for Kenya to get those international visitors back. And within that, we believe there's a key aspect of any recovery strategy, which is how do we encourage international airlines to bring Kenya back as a destination as fast as possible. Every destination in the world will be trying to get those flights back to bring inbound tourism, and Kenya is no different.
What if
so we need to incentivize.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the ideas and something that we looked at, we've sort of been reading about is I think a few years ago when Egypt went through some security threats, their government introduced, for example, charter subsidies, which effectively guarantee charter companies revenue to bring those charter flights back to Egypt. So Kenya, we really need to start thinking like that. Obviously, there's fairly straightforward incentives in terms of tourist visa fees, park entry fees, which we can hopefully reduce to encourage people to return to Kenya. And it's really a case of, can we get any commitments on that now? Because people are already, they're looking to travel. They want, people in lockdown in Europe and America, they're thinking, where do I go when I can get out of my isolation and quarantine? So if we can get commitments now as to what incentives are in place, I know we had the VAT reduction, which is fantastic. And I think the CS Treasury has mentioned that those incentives and concessions will last longer than the COVID-19 crisis, which again is really comforting for us as private investors. But it's really getting as much certainty as we can now so that we can plan our recovery strategy now.
Ross, the minister yesterday was talking about even the local industry looking at expanding the product offering. Safari has always been the big thing that Kenya sells. But what else is it that Kenya can package as a tourism destination?
Well, for us, I think, as I mentioned, we get fantastic support from the local resident market in Watamu. So obviously beach holidays are almost number one of global sort of popularity in terms of types of holiday vacation. And we work on how do we differentiate necessarily what a resident visitor might prefer to do on the beach rather than an international visitor, albeit I don't think they're particularly different. We had an interesting conversation with Caroline Matoko about a year ago. We were working with her on something, and she mentioned how she'd taken her daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, to Dubai to see dolphins in an aquarium because she didn't know that we had dolphins on the coast of Kenya. So it's really getting the message out as to what Kenya offers. And I think a resident visitor is not necessarily that different to an international visitor. They want good service, they want value for money, they want to feel looked after.
And they want to experience it.
Absolutely, and they want to experience. And those things are fundamentals of hospitality, and they don't change depending on where the visitor is coming from.
Indeed, it's interesting that you mentioned dolphins. There are also whales coming into Kenya.
Yeah, they should be hopefully arriving in sort of July time. It's the annual migration of humpback whales up through the coast of Kenya. And hopefully we can be open and we can be entertaining and looking after some resident guests through that period for them to experience that humpback whale migration as well.
Rosa, I want to ask you a general question, not specific to Hemingways. Given this great need that the country currently has for isolation and for quarantining people who may exhibit signs of being infected by the COVID virus, is it possible that the service industry that you belong to could play a part in providing assistance in just room capacity and the availability of places, given support from the Ministry of Health and so forth? Can they play a part in helping with these processes?
I think certainly there is a potential opportunity. I know a lot of hotels have already put their names forward to provide those services. Again, I think we need clarity on what that looks like. Personally, we feel that there is a risk to our brand to a certain extent of offering a quarantine facility. So whilst we want to be, very good citizens and support where we can, it's a tough decision for hoteliers to make, but it's something that we're looking at very carefully to see how we can help.
So is this a decision that would come from the association that you all belong to? Because if it did, then you'd be speaking with one voice on the particular subject, isn't it?
Well, as I said, I think the association has made available the opportunity for hotels to volunteer or nominate themselves as facilities.
Yeah.
And that's been, widely received with many hotels putting themselves forward. To be honest, this time with the number of infections in Kenya being quite low, the opportunity there for extra bed space required doesn't seem to be needed at this point. But if and when that changes, then I think there would be a big push at the industry level to see how we can help.
All right. But lastly, even when this coronavirus is at an end, there is an aspect of tourism that is referred to as health tourism, if I'm not wrong.
There is certainly. And I'm not sure Kenya necessarily has historically been a sort of player in that market.
Okay, what are our limitations? And if we wanted to play a part in it, what would we do? Specifically, what could Hemingway do to participate in this particular market?
Well, I guess, regionally, I think Kenya and Nairobi is well known to have, leading healthcare facilities. And therefore, there is an opportunity, I think, in Nairobi, particularly with hotels, to support that industry. I think it's a little bit like the question of sort of retirement business in the hospitality industry, where people need certainty on visa requirements for long stays. And that's one of the things that historically has hampered a little bit efforts to generate some interest in that part of the sector.
Indeed. Ross, let's talk about the Masai Mara and also all the other hotel properties, not just yours, that operate in the game parks and game reserves. What kind of impact are you having when you don't see hotels operating in these areas, or conservation efforts and all?
Yeah, I think this is something that we're really aware of. So our camp, Olseki, is in Naibosha Conservancy, one of the private conservancies adjacent to the National Reserve. And there is a big challenge in terms of how we support the local communities there.
Yeah.
With no revenue coming in the camps. We have commitments on leases. And we are working very hard with that local community to negotiate and agree concessions on how we survive and ensure that those conservancies survive. I think it would be the same in terms of the national parks in Kenya. There'll be a huge drop in revenue for KWS. And how do we ensure that these fantastic wildlife areas are secured during this time of crisis, so that when we do recover, those areas are still there for resident and international visitors.
What would it take? Because one of the things that you're mentioning is the local communities depend heavily on the properties that operate there. So we need to ensure that also we are supporting those local communities. What would it take?
Well, absolutely. I think, as I said, there's been fantastic engagement already. And the local communities and the leaders in those communities are very aware of the challenge. I think we need to be very transparent as to the length of time that this might continue,
Yep.
and the effect on all of our revenues. I know, for example, that at conservancies in the Masai Mara, we are sharing all of our revenue information with landowner communities so that they can see the impact. We're not hiding anything. And as I said, we're getting fantastic support. One of the other benefits is obviously the efforts at Treasury level to encourage local banks to provide concessions to individual borrowers.
Yeah.
And obviously many of those community landowners are impacted by that, and those concessions can really help in terms of negating a reduction in lease revenue to manage their borrowing obligations.
Ross Evans, Operations Director, Hemingway's Collection, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you for having me on, and to you guys and all your listeners, stay safe and let's get through this together.
You
Thanks,
too.
Ross.
Together we shall overcome. Asante sana. Have a good one.
Thank you.
It's a hard hit for this sector of our economy.
Yeah, and you can imagine we're not looking at, you have minimum staff. We're looking at completely shut down.
It's completely
because
shut down.
we're not going to be able to operate.
And it's
otherwise.
across the country.
Yeah.
Normally we'd see a shutdown, for renovations for hotels along the coast. Now we're seeing everywhere. It's not just hotels, it's also restaurants. It's any place that deals with hospitality and food.
And if you look at the numbers of the people who actually work within the hospitality industry, talk about 1 million to 1.5 million people.
Yeah.
Those are many people. And these are individuals. What about the families that they represent?
Yeah, exactly. There are people who depend on them for sustenance.
If you do the numbers, this one is tricky. But this is where now, rethinking everything, that's now the opportunity.
This is where it comes in.
Yes, this way it comes in, because lest we get caught up with such a situation, it doesn't have to be coronavirus, but lest, whether it's some natural disasters, but lest we find ourselves in a position where we need some emergency, this is it.
This is
the time to actually put these things in place. This is the time to think
that never again shall we be where we
be
are
caught
now.
up with this, when we know very well that with the resources we've always had, we could have been prepared. We could have been much better prepared than we are now.
Indeed.
Yes.
We're coming to the top of the hour, CT Muga. Today's proverb.
Lovely, lovely proverb. Do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle. Do not bite the hand that feeds you.
Do not insult your country.
Yes. Do not insult your country by lying to it. Do not insult your country by thinking that fault lies only with some inanimate objects or far-flung people. You are part of this country. You are part of the citizenry, and this government is yours.
You're part of the solution as well.
Yes.
As we are fighting COVID-19, we ought to fight COVID-19 together. What you ought to do, make sure that you're doing. What the government ought to do, make sure that you're calling out the government to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But you can't sit back and say, they were waiting for World Bank money. I'm not going to wash my hands.
No. Absolutely
That
no.
is
No
calling-
correlation whatsoever.
That is calling it a forest. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. Keep it right here. The Situation Room continues. Shortly, we'll be talking to Cherotich Sei. What does she call herself? An active citizen of the Republic of Kenya. Good morning.
Voila.
Spice up your
Has
life.
anything changed from what we saw last time? Not really. Still roads quite open and for us all to use. Not much traffic anywhere today. Likely to be the case until about 5 o'clock or just a little bit earlier. Then when everybody makes a scramble, mad dash to get out of the city and home as the curfew. Remember, 7 o'clock should find you at home. So for now, nothing much happening on the roads as we see them. If it does, remember the drill. Do give us a call, send us a message. Let's see what you see, and we'll keep that information flowing.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the
9.
chair,
Good morning, and
seasoned
thank you very much for
journalist,
tuning into
news
The
hound,
Situation.
a
This
man
is
who
Kenya's
believes
biggest
in
conversation. We're broadcasting in Malindi 97.9, Nyeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nakuru 96.0, 102.5 Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, 94.4 in Nairobi. Worldwide, www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at SpiceFMKE. Tag us on our individual Twitter handles at Nduoko, at CT Muga, at Eric Latif. Do not insult the forest that shelters you. Don't call the forest that shelters you
A jungle.
jungle. You put the word insult. I've already created my own.
Yes,
No, he's processing
he's
it,
created his own.
and I'm just
I have
helping him process.
localized it.
Yes, I can. You know, you have to welcome it because it's a homegrown solution. Yes, he's figured forest, jungle, forest, forest,
join.
forest. Today we're not thinking of monkeys in the forest. how we know.
Usitukane mama yako.
Yes, exactly. True.
You get that, right?
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Direct
Put it well.
translation into it. This is it. So we were talking about the what we ought to do as citizens, the solutions that we need to know to take as ourselves. Remember all the information that you've been given by the World Health Organization, by the Ministry of Health, by the CS for Health. Every single day, the government reminds you just social distancing.
In fact, when you think about it, you see all these businesses prior to some of these catastrophes that have befallen us, many of them have corporate social responsibility programs that they carry out.
Yeah.
This is yet another opportunity for them to look at these things closely, especially their contribution towards the health sector. If you are a service industry, you're a hotel, you're a camp, there's a health facility near you. What is this thing that you could have done to make that health facility more vibrant?
Yep.
What could you have contributed? Because remember, you have guests, then you have repeat guests, then you have friends. What stops people for you from actually starting a scheme because you have that facility? So that some of these local facilities, and I'm saying this because people have done it,
Yeah.
becomes a serious world-class facility where someone, say for instance, falls sick, God forbid, say somewhere in some far-flung place which they wanted to go to, you don't have to fly all the way to Nairobi. They can actually be attended to
Locally.
very safely
Apo.
before they're taken elsewhere.
True.
Okay? If you're talking about people who have to live in those far-flung places, the children could actually go to a school. Why? Because you've supported, because it isn't as though it's just one business. The other businesses around there. A school has been supported that provides world-class education for the children of the people who actually live there, but for others. This is an opportunity to relook everything that we do. If it's the support you give, not so that you're looking at it in terms of, well, this is good for them. What if I were?
Yeah.
What if I were?
Yep.
This scary business about the limitation of, say, ICU facilities or critical care facilities, it's something that has never been thought of. With HIV patients, a ward was created for them,
Yeah.
and they were cared for in that
In a ward.
specific ward. But all these things that go with critical care, unless somebody, for instance, had a system that had now collapsed and need to go to the ICU, again, you now need to rethink. When you have a sub-county hospital, what else should you have in
What
this
should you have?
Yes, that would cater for somebody who's critically
An
ill.
example, as we were looking at the list of hospitals around the country and their critical care facilities, the capacity, I picked a note. Kitui has 0, Machakos has 6, Makueni has 4, right? So if you think about what Makueni has been able to do, they built a brand new, swanky, new facility, and they ensured that they have got 4 critical care facilities. Okay, they've got a capacity of 4 beds. In those 4 beds, 2 are occupied, 2 are not occupied. But at least they're there. Those people,
They built them.
People in Makueni, those 2 did not need to move out of Makueni.
No, they didn't.
To go elsewhere. You may actually find that these are people from Kitui who have come to use this
Because
facility.
Kitui doesn't have any.
Because Kitui has 0. So it's important that we start thinking about this. When we talk about universal healthcare and the Big 4, first of all, the Big 4 agenda, Uhuru's Big 4 agenda, we were telling him before he was not listening, and now it's gone. Big 4, forget it.
It's done.
The only thing, if he can just leave a legacy, then just point us towards universal healthcare. Manufacturing, it's going to take 2022, he'll not have done anything.
You know, manufacturing doesn't actually require that much government efforts, except in providing tools which the government has at its disposal to ensure that it's encouraged. Lower the cost of power. Hands up.
They've done that with you know what they did with making sure that they have lower tariff at night to encourage companies to continue manufacturing and operating 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's something. Expand that capacity.
You know,
if
that's
we're
us
only
being
using
polite.
1.8 and we have generated 2.4.
Surely. You know, this piecemeal thing of let's test the waters and see how it works.
It's not like that.
Just
Do it.
reduce it.
Just do it.
Just
Do
reduce
it. Reduce it so that there's a direct impact immediately. So then the challenge is, why are you not producing? And we've given you the opportunity to produce.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it piecemeal, then everybody else moves at that piecemeal pace.
Yeah.
Back to
Yes.
universal health coverage. Universal health coverage. Just instead of now giving it 6%, cut back some of these things. Put more money in health.
Look
We
at-
have seen, we have been exposed. We are seeing. We are talking about we don't have our capacity. We have how many doctors are we going to hire in this period? Is it 1,000?
But it's 1,000. But mind you, that 1,000 is not just doctors. It's medical
It's
staff.
medical staff.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yes,
even
but,
that,
Medical
but-
staff.
but
We have
how many,
trained-
How many
trained.
trained doctors do we have who are not employed?
I think they were looking at around that number,
2,000.
around 2,000. Yeah.
2.
Yeah, it's 2,000 that are not
The
employed,
other cadre of
available
health
in
workers,
this country.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, see this piecemeal thing? Absorb all of them and then figure out how you're going to sort it
Took
out.
them around the country.
Absorb it. I mean, this
This is
piecemeal
one
approach,
service
what is
that
it?
we are consuming anyway. We're not talking about no demand for health services. The demand for health services is there.
There's been no greater demand than now.
Yeah.
Because it's critical. It's not just a great demand, it's a critical demand. You know, imagine a country that doesn't even have the personnel. As we have.
We do.
We have. We don't have to bring them from Cuba. We have. They're trained here, they understand here, and they haven't had much to do. You know, those numbers, would change this situation we're talking about greatly.
Dramatically, I think
Yes.
you would see an absolute change if you saw.
Look
things
at
like-
countries that focus on private healthcare. Look at how they're suffering. Look at countries. You know, one of the saving graces that the UK has is
the
becau-
NHS.
It's the NHS.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
They do.
In that it works.
Yes, it does. If you look around the world, the Western world, countries that seem to be surviving, they have a public health
Proper
system.
public healthcare system.
They
The
do.
Nordic countries,
They do. Oh,
like in Finland, they're not even thinking about, do we have the capacity? We have the hospitals.
in fact, the Scandinavians, what they're now focusing on is how to have compulsory testing.
Yes.
That's their worry. Now, isn't that a nice thing to worry about?
Yeah, the Scandinavia is not really looking at the issues that the rest of the world is looking at right now. They're years ahead in terms of where they're going with this thing.
Now, you see, what has also been brought into the discussion is the policies surrounding economic governance and thinking strictly of capitalism.
Yeah.
Those countries have very strong socialist leanings.
True.
Strong. Capitalism is allowed, yes, but strong, meaning
socialist leanings.
the communities have to be looked, the Mwananchi has to be looked after. And that one, if you look at the examples, they've taken care of it. And they also don't joke with it. It's taken seriously. Free education from the time you're born up to university. Not this one of free, but you pay
that
this.
is
No, the real free.
You go to school.
Yes, you
The
just
real
get
free.
yourself up and go. And it's not as though you have to travel far.
The
There's
school-
always something in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
The
So it's a
school
question
is
of
right
choosing where
there.
you want to go to. Now, that's planning. Now, that is now. We're talking about social. What responsibility were we talking about before?
Social protection.
There's not just social protection and responsibility.
It's a responsibility.
Where do you even begin to complain if you want to
Africans,
complain?
we are socialists by nature.
We are
All
very
these things.
we are
that-
very inclined.
This thing of trying to focus into capitalism
It's what disorients us.
It's completely thrown us off balance.
Our entire leaning, it's towards family units,
Togetherness,
helping-
absolutely.
Togetherness.
It's how we think.
And now to be able to see that and then translate that into the way in which we do things, as opposed to wanting to adopt what other countries have been able to do over time.
With the disastrous consequences.
Disastrous results. With disastrous results in the making. I mean, it just seems that, what worked previously, and it worked brilliantly when you want to look at, even not in modern times, even older civilizations.
Yep.
It was a togetherness, and I think of the whole Ujamaa idea in Tanzania and people taking care of each other. Interestingly enough, you'll find that threads of that still run similarly even in our modern day government.
They're still there.
Look at what we're talking about right now with
We've
all
come
this
up with a
COVID.
fund.
There's a fund. What does that
The
mean?
first thing that we are
People
thinking
coming
of,
together
guys.
to make it work.
And even as the fund is being created, there are people who've already organized
Already
their own
organized
funds and they're
themselves
already doing
and
it.
they're
They're not
doing
waiting
things.
for the government. They're actually doing it.
It's a
it
natural
still runs,
thing.
It's a natural thing, it seems. It still runs through. And people say, well, in order for us to get this thing done, we're going to have to come together. You're
Now,
not going to be able to operate in isolation.
You see, you've
even
men-
as much as COVID wants you to isolate.
You mentioned
in this case,
Ujamaa. Magafuli sounds a little crazy, a little off his rockers with the statements he has made. But listen, he has that system that has been in place for the longest time.
Yeah.
You cannot go to Tanzania without them knowing who you are, where you're going, and what you're going to do. And where you're going, they will also know who you are. Meaning,
it's kind of freaky, but it actually
no,
happens.
but think,
think about it when you know that. Yeah.
think about it, but think about an epidemic.
Yeah.
It's a safety measure.
People know
Everywhere
who
you
you
go.
are. They know.
If you fall
this
sick,
one,
you're not feeling sick, they will
will
know.
know.
they will know. This one is not normally in this area.
Yes.
So it's very easy
Where-
for them. Maybe that's why Magufuli is just
Maybe
like
that's
that,
why
because
they
he
don't have
knows
You know, this contact tracing that we're worried about,
this is
find
going to
it's
work.
part and parcel of their system.
Yeah. It's
They
going to work.
contact trace you when you enter that the country.
Even without COVID.
Fulani
Yes.
imetoka Dubai juzi.
Yes, yeah, and it's known. Hajisikii vizuri.
Yeah. Hatujamwona
Ako
hapa
sana
nje.
yule.
Anaumwa. Hatujamwona nje siku tatu sasa.
Yes, and someone will be sent information, so we will know. Now you see, they have the system. We don't. What we had, we've slowly been eroding.
We have eroded
Yeah,
our
this is
system
the case.
because we have it.
We have it.
We have it.
But we're
You go
slowly
back to the
eroding it.
rural areas, you'll find that people know some.
No, they do.
Some of this
They
information
do.
is clear.
They do. Why do you think it is in the rural areas? You are walking, if say you go for a walk, people greet you. Now, you think you don't know them, they know you.
Yeah.
It's
They
you who doesn't
know-
know them, but they know you.
And if they don't know you, they'll still greet you.
They'll still greet you, after all.
Habari yako?
Yes.
And they're looking at you trying to figure you out.
Yes.
Who is this person?
And if you stop and have a conversation,
Even better.
They'll find out exactly who
it's
you are,
much,
where
much
you
better.
come from.
It's much, much better. Believe me, usually they'll figure out who you are. Because somebody will have said, oh, you know, so-and-so's child came.
Yes.
Because you always somebody's child.
Always.
Even if your parents are not alive, you're still
You're
somebody's
someone's
child.
child.
Yes. That's the reference point. There are things that we've had and which over time we've lost. This is also a time for recovering them.
And it will help us fight corruption. If we go back into that, because like we were talking about yesterday, somebody comes here and they're starting to live a different lifestyle, put them in check.
You ask
Checks
them.
and balances are just
Yes.
naturally just there.
Yes.
Na wewe.
Where did all this come from?
Yes. And don't let it be somebody who you know, somebody who is in your age group, somebody who, ask him, Chief, hey, what in this business that you're doing?
Yep.
Tell me about it. So that even
If we do not demonize wrongdoing, the next time we have such a problem, that is I fear to imagine what the consequences will
would
be.
Yep.
be.
Because this to me is an opportunity. It's like a second chance.
Second chance. This is it.
Pause, contemplate, change.
Time for a rebirth.
Yes.
Time for a rebirth of the Kenyan nation. What BBI was telling us to do, well, COVID has just made us
What's
move.
BBI?
That BBI, I think it was telling us, let's go around the
Oh,
country.
BBI,
Oh, this is it.
been
COVID
a
has just
minute,
told us,
hasn't it?
okay, you, reset. Time for a reset. It's 9:15. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can call and ask any question for Dr. Mercy Korir. She'll be joining us online on the phone from 9:30. You can also post your questions on Facebook and Twitter, and she'll be here to respond to them. Good morning.
All right, it seems to be warming up a little bit in Nairobi as we look at changing weather conditions. The sun is coming out just a little bit, and we'll have mostly cloudy conditions for parts of the day, highs of 27 and lows of 16. In Nyeri at 18 degrees, it's going to be partly cloudy through most of the day, warming up a little bit, and then cooling down with showers in the afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 15. It's 17 degrees rather in Nakuru, 27 degrees the high and the low at 14 with partly cloudy conditions. In Eldoret today, it's mostly sunny this morning at 17 degrees. We'll see a high of 26 and a low of 13. In Kisumu, it's mostly sunny this morning at 24 degrees, highs of 30 and lows of 19. In Malindi at 30 degrees, it's partly cloudy, rain showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 33 and lows of 28. In Mombasa, mostly sunny conditions at 30 degrees, rain showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 33 and lows of 27. In Kampala today, it's partly cloudy at 24 degrees, showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 27 and lows of 21. In Dar es Salaam, it's partly cloudy this morning at 29 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 32 and lows of 26. And in Johannesburg, it's mostly sunny this morning at 16 degrees. Some showers expected later, highs of 22 and lows of 11. And we'll take a look finally in Lagos with light thunderstorms, scattered thunderstorms across the city this morning at 26 degrees, likely to continue through the rest of the day with highs of 34 and lows of 25.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
We talked about such for a while.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Of COVID-19, the lockdowns, businesses closing, some of them being rendered jobless. Let's now talk about what exactly is being done and by whom. And we're joined by active citizen Chero Titsei. Good morning, Chero.
Good morning, Eric. That must be you, huh?
That must be me, yes, indeed. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Mimi niko salama sana. Salimia Nduoko and Siti Muga who are here with me.
Good morning, Chero.
Hey, Siti, Nduko, hey.
Hi, how are you?
Not Nduko, Ndu. Why do I call you Nduko?
Don't worry.
Now that's her Kenyan name.
That's a Kenyan name. Yeah, if you go around saying your name is Ndu, we'll call you Nduko.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's happened already.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Cherotich, we here there are very many initiatives that have been taken by citizens on trying to help one another.
Yes. I would just say that, Kenyans are alive to the fact that COVID is real and it's coming. Of course, the information needs to be spread far and wide or be more widespread from a civic education perspective and an understanding of what COVID actually means. But for those, especially those in urban centers who are really feeling the effects of the curfew, they know it's coming. So I'm sure, and I do not know all of them, that there are quite a number of initiatives out there where people have said, let's do something. Let's start building food banks. Let's see whether we can identify vulnerable people in our community. You don't have to go far. You just need to go to the local kiosk or to see different people just in your immediate environment who have lost their jobs because of COVID. And it's been very gratifying to see that there are people out there trying to do something. For my part, I tweeted about somebody who asked me for 150 shillings just to buy unga because his situation was so desperate. And from there was a spontaneous outpouring of support from Kenyans. And in about 2 days, we had 142,000 shillings. And this week, I've received another almost 50,000 shillings. And we're helping families. For me, I'm a strong believer in cash transfers. There's no dignity in poverty. There's no dignity in begging. There's no dignity in desperation. And I'm a firm believer that if somebody says, I need something, give them money. Don't lecture them. Don't disturb them. Don't somare them, because they're already in a tight situation when they're having to come and approach you for some assistance.
Indeed.
So for my particular initiative, it was just a case of, do we have 2,000 bob or 4,000 bob or 8,000? Because obviously I don't have access to a massive fund, and I'm 100% relying on the generosity of Kenyans who have been absolutely wonderful, both in Kenya and in the diaspora. So this is just one of the many initiatives, but ultimately the responsibility for care and protection of citizens is the government of Kenya.
What should they do, Chero? I mean, what should they do? We've asked before, but like now we look at what you've been able to do just in a couple of days with contribution from, a sprinkling of people and what has been achieved, right? Talking about the practicality of it now, what should government do? I mean, you talk about your firm belief of cash transfers. Is that what we're looking at now?
Well, right now I know that the government has made reference to about 10 billion shillings that would be set aside for orphans and vulnerable members of the community. I don't know whether that is in the form of cash transfer or commodities. But, as you all know, I'm the queen of sharp elbows in the ribs of the government, and I'm not one to shy away from criticizing aspects of mismanagement and graft and so on. But I always say, and I said it in an op-ed that I released last week, that when it comes to an emergency, all hands should be on deck. And my biggest challenge and concern with the government is beyond the biomedical response to this pandemic, rightfully so, because if we don't get a grip on this medically, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. But beyond that biomedical aspect, I feel that people have been left out of the planning. People should be at the center of any emergency response. This is the right thing to do. It's a rights-based way to do work. And in fact, in situations of emergencies, people affected by emergencies are ultimately in line for the highest level of protection possible. So I feel that in terms of the government response, when you're talking about curfews, when you're talking about potential lockdowns, when you're talking about social distancing and things like that, if you have not considered the effect of all these directives on the daily lives of Kenyans, then you're missing the plot. And this is why I talk about things like cash transfers. I also talk about mobile medical services. Take the services to the people. If you're complaining about social distancing and matatus and so on and so forth, why not look at Nairobi in a zoned manner and say, look, we can have mobile medical services brought to the people in this area, that area, and that area, so that you avoid that shoulder rubbing in matatus on your way to Kenyatta Hospital, on your way to Mbagathi. You only look at water. Cartels control water sales in Kenya, and especially in Nairobi. And people in underserved communities, because of course Nairobi water doesn't get there, bear the heaviest brunt. If you want people to wash hands, if you want the environment to be clean, water should be provided. If you're looking at those who are disabled, infirm, chronically ill, who can't leave their homes, yes, consider food packages and services all the way to them. Look at the Nyumba Kumi approach. Look at community-based healthcare workers who can reach out and tell you immediately who is vulnerable. I don't see any of that. And if it's happening, then it's a top secret. And ultimately what's going to happen is when the lockdown is effected, and I see it coming, we will have desperate, starving people. And then there's also a very important thing I want to touch on. It's the class divide. There's been appalling dialogue and discussions and debate on social media where people in the leafy suburbs are not pro-lockdown. Why not? Because they say, okay, no, these people will have nothing to eat and then they will invade us. So this is a very different and wrong way of looking at rights. Rights are rights across the board. You should never be thinking that you don't want to have a lockdown or you want to ease or restrict some of the curfew measures because you don't want poor people coming to your neighborhood. No, it should be because they're Kenyans and they deserve the same kind of access to services that you have. And for whatever reason, you're fortunate enough to be able to stockpile. And I will not deny, I am a middle-class Kenyan. And in my own way, I've been able to do a bit of stockpiling. But every time I get to the checkout counter, I think about every single family that relies on 200 to 500 shillings a day to survive. How do you tell such a person to stockpile? They don't have refrigerators. They don't have electricity. They don't have storage cupboards. If you're 8 people in a small room, where is your pantry? Where are your cupboards? So this lack of pathos and this them and us and this class divide is something that will also explode. And if people are afraid of being invaded, then they should problematize it and say, what happened that we have so many underserved neighborhoods and underserved communities in, for example, Nairobi or Mombasa or Kisumu or Nakuru or Eldoret. The rural area is a different proposition, but I'm talking about the urban centers and the kind of them and us divide that is emerging.
But isn't it interesting that almost every affluent area has a neighborhood that is economically disadvantaged?
Absolutely. I call Nairobi a donut. If you look, and I think I said this on Inside Politics the other day, I said if you look at Nairobi, it's like the outer ring of the donut is where all the underserved communities live. And as they're sitting there, they come every day. They come as the gardeners, the house helps, the drivers, the chefs. They are the cheap, free, and sometimes even slave labor for the better served communities. So obviously, when you have a Karen, you will have informal settlements on the outskirts, because where else are the house helps going at night or the gardeners? So it is a necessary a byproduct of these wealthy suburbs in an unequal community, in an unequal country such as ours.
But then it also provides an opportunity, because if with such neighborhood structures, then it means that every affluent community has a neighborhood they can adopt to assist.
Yes, but that's even, if you forgive me for saying it, a bit patronizing, because, well,
how is it patronizing?
Okay, in a case of an emergency, yes, every affluent community should know in our area we have Kawangware or Kibra and so on and so forth. What I mean patronizing is in the longer term, because it's not up to the wealthier communities to take care of the poorer communities. It is up to the government to have resources.
Now what you're saying is patronizing, but carry on.
What I'm saying is patronizing.
Yes,
in what
it
sense?
is.
Why?
You see, I look at government as you and I and all these other people we keep speaking of in the third person as though they are a separate entity. And when we talk about the situation we have now, this is an emergency. This is not a normal situation. And so the solutions that we want to prefer cannot be normal. If someone is in your neighborhood, that is your neighbor, and they're in a position of want, should you then not focus because they're your neighbor on assisting them?
I corrected myself. I divided it into two, CT, if that's you. I first of all said yes. I corrected myself and said, in the event of an emergency, it's all hands on deck. And you should help at whatever level, wherever you are, however you can. In the medium to long term, these are the issues that I say are the responsibility of the government. Yes, which is you and me. But since when were you able to walk into State House City and say you want this and that and the other just because you're government? We are government, but we are not government. We vote, but we don't have a say. So in the no-holds-barred, flat-out emergency period, yes, help anyone and everyone. Yes, adopt a neighborhood, no matter whether I like the sound of that language or not, adopt a neighborhood. But better still, just give. If you know somebody somewhere who is suffering, ask your guard, is your guard okay? Is the family okay? Are they taking care of neighbors who have been laid off work because of coronavirus?
Yeah.
So CT, I understand what you're saying, and yes, it's not patronizing in the face of an acute, sudden onset emergency such as the one that we're facing. And this is exactly what I'm doing when I'm asking Kenyans of goodwill to give money. Give money. Don't give it through Chero or don't give it through other bodies. Give it yourselves directly. M-Pesa, you have under 1,000 shillings. Fees have been waived. Help people. Send them cash. Let them do what they need to do. In fact, somebody who I assisted instantly sent his wife and kids to Shags.
Yeah.
Which, of course, the government is against, because they're saying, oh, no, stay in one place. Don't move. Otherwise, you're spreading it. But people have instinctive ways of self-preservation. And one of the ways of preserving themselves is to say, I'm going Shags, or I'm taking my family to Shags.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I can grow some skuma wiki on a patch somewhere. Social distancing is far more easy than it would be if I'm in my crowded space somewhere in Kibra or wherever it is that I have my family. So people should be allowed to find empowering ways that they can support and sustain themselves during this acute phase of the emergency. But don't forget that in an emergency situation, you have the preparedness. We haven't had that much time for preparedness. And then you have the acute phase. And then you have the immediate post-crisis phase and what you call early recovery. And then you go into the longer-term development spaces. So this is the humanitarian development nexus that I'm talking about. And so even as we're doing preparedness and response right now, you want to say, what do we want to look at long-term? As we're water trucking, as we're distributing food, as we're making cash transfers, what do we need to do in order to stabilize our socioeconomic fabric to insulate us, or to the best of our ability, even more than we already are, from future shocks?
Cheryl, let's go back to the initiative that you talked about, the one that you've started. You're personally contributing some money through your friends and people who know you, people who've read your tweets. And so far, you've raised close to 200,000 shillings, which you're sending to people that you know.
Not that I know. I don't know a single person. They have just sent me direct messages. I have a queue of about 60 families who are just saying, tafadhali nisaidie, nimefutwa kazi, ama hakuna kazi, ama mtoto mgonjwa. I'm receiving I don't know any of these families from a hole in the ground. They have just heard that kuna initiative mahali, and if you send a message and your phone number, because my principle right now, because I don't have a triage system, I don't have a vulnerability criteria, I'm making the assumption that if we have 12.2 million households in Kenya, roughly, or so the National Bureau of Statistics would have us believe or know, I would imagine that between 7 to 10 million households are already in a state of vulnerability because of this crisis. Even if you don't have hundreds of thousands of people dying, the economy has changed and has been shocked because of the virus. So when people reach out to me, I ask no questions. I say, pole sana kwa msiba, or I say, here is 2K or here is 4K. And the only vulnerability criteria I'll use is, for example, there was a quarry worker whose wife died. And somebody referred him to me and said, this man is really struggling. He has got 6 children. The job at the quarry has ended. He doesn't know what to do. That gentleman, I've even forgotten his name, I sent 8K to. There was somebody who had a child who had been knocked by a vehicle somewhere in Narok, and the child was in hospital. On top of that, the person was a waiter and had been laid off. I sent 4K. But on average, when people are saying, I just need to buy food, I need to just make sure my children have food on the table, I send 2K. Is it going to change their lives? No. Does it allow them to have hope for another day?
Yes, it does.
Or 3 or 4? It does. And that's why I would urge every single Kenyan that there's no amount too small. Somebody even sent me 5 bob on M-Pesa, and somebody sent me 30,000 shillings. And I've had wonderful people from the diaspora as well, sending 2K, 5K, 10K when they can. So whatever you have, it counts. When I get 10K, I say that's 5 families sorted. I cannot be the magic bullet. We cannot solve all their problems. But if they have unga, mboga, some mafuta, some salt, some oil, that's the difference you need to make today, because we're in the acute phase of the emergency.
That's why you're an active citizen, Chero, and we thank you very much for taking such initiative and also for the lessons that you're giving us. You know, everybody from wherever you are, if you can do. Whatever you can, if you can give somebody 10 bob, that goes a long way in helping them, whatever you can. Asante sana, Chero.
Yes. Thank you too. Thank you.
Thank
for
you so
giving
much,
me
Heritage. Thank you for.
All right. Thanks, CT. Thanks, Ndu, not Nduko. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure having you on the show.
And you have my phone number. Send me some money.
We will.
For sure.
I have your phone number. I will send you 5 shillings.
Please, that will count. Trust me, it makes a difference.
It makes a difference.
Take care.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
24 minutes to 10 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Shortly, we'll be talking to Dr. Mercy Korir. Any questions that you have, post them to at Mercy Korir on Twitter, at CT Muga, at Nduoko, at Eric Latif, at Spice FM KE, and also on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Good morning.
Not much happening today. A small accident experienced on Langata Road. People moving a little bit faster than they probably should because of the fact that there are no vehicles on the road. But that's been sorted. Looking then around the city on Mombasa Road and other roads, other streets. Not much traffic today, guys, and it's probably going to be this way for a couple of days in the future. Asking ourselves to be extremely careful, though, wherever it is that we look. Same situation around the country, though, in Mombasa as well. Within the town, not much happening. And looking west in Kisumu as well, in the middle of the city, very little traffic, minimal across board. Spice of MK, if something is out of the ordinary, let us know and we'll spread the word.
Kenya's biggest conversation. So you're going to send some money. It's important that, not just sending some money to Chero, but thinking of whoever you can help, whoever you can assist.
If you find it difficult to extrapolate, start with your own family.
Yeah.
There has to be
somebody
who need help.
Yeah. Somebody who requires a meal. Anything small could go a long way.
It's very interesting when you talk about social norms and about how many social norms that we once had, things which were admirable, changed, and they didn't change for the better. And we're talking about some things we need to relearn and reacquire. One of the things that someone brought to my attention, so this social media is a good thing, is how in the past, when men had girlfriends of what you call mpango kando.
In the past?
In the past, it's a sentence which I've begun, I'm continuing. Okay. They would keep them hidden. But in modern times, they don't hide them. They will even take them to social places, family gatherings, meaning what was previously frowned upon has become the norm. And usually
people are taking them pangokandos to their wives.
Public gatherings.
But making sure that the wife does not come to this public gathering.
Oh, no. Some don't even bother with that.
It doesn't matter.
No. What the wife thinks she's allowed to continue thinking.
Good grief.
Yes. I'm using an extreme example, but I'm talking about how social norms go wrong. We're talking about how I'm thinking, feeling, and caring. Sometimes you find the people who have the responsibility in government are. I'm taking it further socially. If you look carefully, you'll find that there are social norms that you previously probably took for granted. Now, call it a generational change, call it what you like. But what is certain is that things that previously would have been frowned upon are not necessarily frowned upon anymore. Yes. That's
very interesting.
They become normal.
They've become normal.
They've become normal.
And it starts with a small thing, so you think.
Yep.
But the manifestations of it, if you look at it within the social construct of what we have, it can alarm you. And one of them is that people actually don't care very much about their neighbor or the next person.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yes. And people don't look at you, they quantify you.
Mind your own business.
Yes.
That's very interesting because going home in December and I remember being in the neighborhood even when I was as a child, and even taking a walk, my neighbors are still asking, at this age, where are you going? Where are you going? Is your mother around? I have children. I'm not a child. Okay.
You even have a husband.
Yeah. So, people are really, I think I don't know if it's about culture or tradition or country to country, but people are still, just taking the Nigerian example, people are still very, very concerned, and I think I raised this before, that Kenyans generally are not a poke-nosing kind of people, or kind of asking, what are you up to or what are you doing? But then I don't know if it would necessarily be poke-nosing, because then if something were to happen, people are aware that something
everybody knows
happened
and is available
to
help you.
Right, or to help, that kind of thing.
Yep.
To say that you're taking a collective responsibility, and even seeing children playing outside past a certain time. It didn't matter if the person knew you or not, they would tell you to go home. Or if you're not going home, stay here with me until your mother passes, and then I'll hand her over to you. Literally.
Let's go to the phone line. Dr. Mercy Korir joins us now. Good morning, Dr. Mercy Korir.
Good morning, Eric, Ndu, and City.
Good morning, Dr. Mercy.
Good morning.
Good morning. City, this is time where people should find out what their neighbors are up to and know the status of their neighbors. It is actually the one time when it's probably allowed.
It's okay to be
because
nosy.
Your neighbor's health, yes. Your neighbor's health is your health, literally.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Many questions coming in, Dr. Korir, this morning. Let's start with the headline that I've seen in one of the papers, The Star. It's telling you when you get home, you sort of like undress.
That is...
Disinfect everything. If you've got shoes, leave them outside. If you've got, keys, put your keys somewhere. Go and change the clothes that you're wearing. Then disinfect them, wash your hands. It's sort of saying, get into the house and remove everything that you have. Put on your pajamas.
Wait. Are they suggesting that I should remove my clothes in my veranda?
Yes.
Don't step into the house with this.
So that if neighbors are passing by, they can see me in my undergarment.
They should understand there's COVID.
It's COVID season.
That is probably taking it too far. But I think with the headline that is there, that applies more to those people on the front lines, the ones at high risk, and this is the healthcare workers. And that's exactly what they're supposed to do, because in the hospital setting, and especially our isolation units, they're not the ideal isolation units. They're not up to the standard that is required. So that is what they are supposed to do, where you get home, you don't go into the house with the shoes that you had at work. Ideally, they should have a place at work where you change and you leave everything that you had at work and you change to different attire that you will go home with that is not contaminated. But this is where we live in. So they have to actually remove their shoes, any other clothes that they had during work, and put them in a separate basket, not mix them with the other clothes, and decontaminate or disinfect everything as much as possible. So that applies mainly to those people who are at the front line.
Okay. Not for everybody.
All right.
At the moment, not for everybody.
Not for everybody.
But if somebody can do it, why not? But at the moment, not for everybody, because our risk level is not up to that red alert, as, in my opinion. We are not yet at a critical space.
Some concerns for the fact that already with the depressed numbers that we have of health workers in the country, that some of them could be exposed to infections. Is that a cause for concern?
Definitely it is, because when your healthcare workers are contracting the infection at a place of work, that it means there are a lot of infection prevention control measures that are not in place. And this could be right from PPE, availability of PPE, the quality of PPE that they have, use of the PPE, removal of the PPE. It could be a whole spectrum of anything. So when a healthcare worker contracts the infection, and especially if it is found out, like they're supposed to do what is called a forensic analysis to establish where what went wrong. If they contracted it at work, then there's a big problem, because it means then everyone else who is in that facility or who is in that place is equally at risk. Because remember, the patients will not be in PPE. So if your healthcare worker who's supposed to be protected is getting it at work, then it should be a major cause for alarm. And the same in Italy, they've lost a good number of doctors. America, the other day they lost a top neurosurgeon among other healthcare workers. So it is a big cause for alarm, if you ask me, and a lot should be done to ensure the safety of the healthcare workers. And the safety is not just at a personal level, but also the work environment that they are in. Are our isolation centers actually isolation centers?
Okay. Another question. With what we see happening in the quarantine centers and the protection of people, unfortunately, with the conditions is not guaranteed. After those 14 days, is it possible then for someone to be released and then present with symptoms?
Okay, so for the protocol to discharge somebody home is that they should have had 2 consecutive samples test negative in a span of 24 hours. That means they do not have the virus anymore. So that's now the premise in which somebody would be discharged. So if they come back with symptoms, then it means they have probably contracted it from somebody else. That is the local transmission. And we know currently that we are no longer having imported cases because obviously we banned flights. So now we are having local transmission. So if somebody is discharged and they come back with an infection, then you start looking at the extent of local transmission around. And I like what the DG World Health Organization said in one of his daily briefings the other day, was that every confirmed case is a story. You need to find out how they got it, because then that will trigger public health interventions. So if it is, for example, this healthcare worker, if they were in a hospital and they were taking care or attending to somebody else, what were the circumstances around that? What went wrong? What can we do to stop? If somebody got it, like what we saw in Korea, where somebody went to church, or we see closer home with the deputy governor, then you trigger certain public health intervention to contain further spread of the disease. So we need to now start acting, as opposed to now just seeing numbers and saying so and so. These are the many people we have confirmed. We need to go a step further. If we are to slay this thing.
There's some interventions that we are seeing being taken, Dr. by governments. For example, the county government of Nairobi, or is it the national government, one or the other, they have been doing the fumigation in the CBD at night. And now we have seen Mike Sonko updating that they are going to the highly densely populated areas like they were in Kibra yesterday. How does this help? If you just go once and then you come back after 1 week, should it be continuous? Should it be on a daily or regular basis, or is that once enough? Or sweep once? Does it go far enough?
Well, this is my personal opinion, and I'm big on stopping the tap from the source as opposed to downstream. Now, what the fumigation and whatnot you're doing, if you're doing it, it means you're already assuming there is contamination of that place, so you're trying to contain and kill whatever virus is there. But what happens when you live there? Will the people continue doing that? Is it sustainable? So if you ask me, in those densely populated areas in our urban centers, there should be running water throughout and soap, and empower people to do it themselves, because how often will you show up to fumigate, to decontaminate? But if people at their own small spaces in the densely populated informal settlements, we have this water and this soap and this is the work we're supposed to do, people themselves, even including children, will do that. It will be easier for them to clean their hands regularly. It will be easier for them to clean their surfaces. And if one person does it, 50 people do it, 100 people do it, then you will not need to see the mass purifications that we are doing. You probably just need to be doing it once a week. So here, in my opinion, for a public health intervention to be sustainable and to be long-lasting, we have to start thinking of measures that will go beyond now, that will go beyond us containing now, because we are thinking about 6 months, 12 months from now. Is that a sustainable practice? It's not.
Okay, then looking at another question that we have here, is it possible for human corona to be infected with that from an animal source?
Okay, so this particular coronavirus, remember, is from an animal source, from a bat. It just jumped into humans, and now it mutated to a human coronavirus, and we are seeing the problems that we are seeing currently. So yes, there are many, many viruses that animals carry along, especially wild animals, that now when they jump to humans, it becomes a whole big problem like we're seeing. So yes, it's possible.
I know we touched on this about a week ago, but it seems to be raising the roof on panic levels. And the point of COVID-19 being airborne. And I know that there was that erroneous assumption from the article that the World Health Organization did a study on. However, could you just open that up a little bit for us so that we can understand where we are right now? Is COVID-19 airborne or not?
Well, and as late as this morning, I was seeing a lot of information. People are quoting journals and experiences from other countries about it being airborne, and therefore the need to use masks. Looking at it from a science perspective, the droplets, they're heavy. They're unlikely to linger in the air. So they'll just move a meter, and that is what the study has shown, and it drops down in a meter's distance. That's why the physical distancing was at least 1 meter. We saw the UK say 2 meters. So that is the point of it. But I'm seeing other people say, the countries that advocated for everyone wearing masks early on had reduced numbers of COVID-19 cases. I don't know. I think this is now the point where we need to probe further, look further at the science of it, and also just look at those countries. Well, they might have instituted wearing masks early, for example, but what other interventions do they put in place? You'll find that the countries that have recorded low numbers and even low deaths were aggressive in their contact tracing and isolation. So it could be that, yes, everyone was wearing masks, but the other public health interventions that have been proven to work for long were actually taken a notch higher, where everyone who was positive was isolated quickly, and all their contacts were isolated and monitored and whatnot. So it was in a controlled environment, and they were able to control their transmission of infection. So I think there is still a lot to look at when it comes to the issue of being airborne and wearing masks. So hopefully tomorrow we can revisit this conversation. I will have looked at more data, consulted more colleagues, and then tomorrow we'll see. And plus, a lot is happening around the world, around the issue of masks and it being airborne. I'm sure by the time the global north is waking up and we are going to sleep, there'll be a lot of information around that we'll be able to look through.
When people buy medicine, there's usually there's a piece of paper you find in that package with very, very small print. And there's a lot of literature in that. It's in various languages. And they talk about contraindications and all details. Now, these are the things that arise from the research that are conducted on that very drug that you've bought and which you're taking. And it informs you about the possible harms it could cause you, the conditions that it doesn't work with. And all these, again, they know because they've conducted research. This issue that we're talking about is still under research. There is really nothing conclusive that anybody can say, conclusive in the sense that it hasn't been tested multi-sectorally across many communities in large enough numbers for them to somebody to actually come and say, this, we can equivocally say that this is how it is. What we are hearing is the findings at certain stages. And this is something people must understand. It's the same thing with the issue of chloroquine. We mentioned this earlier on in the program. It's the issue with antiretroviral. It's the same thing. These are drugs that were tested for various diseases. They were found to be safe. Human beings could use them. And that's why they're being used. You don't have to retest the drugs again. But now they're being used and they're being tested for a different disease, a different condition. But we are still testing and trying to figure it out. Nothing conclusive has been arrived at.
Actually, it's good that you've mentioned the issue of chloroquine and the and the ARVs.
Yes.
Because preliminary data is actually showing that they have no effect. So, as we say, we are learning along the way, but people that have already tried it are slowly learning that actually they may not be as beneficial as the earlier data had shown, because anyway they were not sent. It was not the research then was not large enough, but now from what people are seeing is like really these drugs may not be useful after all
Even the
in
dosage,
the treatment of coronavirus.
People are just taking it, with a dosage of malaria and assuming that
It'll
when you
work
take
that
it,
way.
the 4-2-2-2-2, it's gonna heal COVID-19.
Some are beginning with 10.
The more, the better.
They're taking the 4-2-2-2 at a go.
And in fact, those people who are taking these anti-malarials should have an ECG. They should have their hearts checked
Yep.
Yes.
because sometimes they alter the electrical activity in the heart, and they should have their potassium checked because they can get a heart attack anytime. So they should be careful and be aware of the side effects that they can suffer, thinking they're curing one, kumbe wanajiletea shida mahali pengine.
Final question. That was our final question. Asante sana Daktari for joining us this morning.
Thank you very
Tomorrow,
much.
as you've promised, you'll have gotten a lot more information from your peers
Yes.
regarding some of the concerns that have been raised so far.
Mm-hmm.
You
We'll do
go
that.
ahead, have a good one, build the nation. But of course, we cannot tell any medic to stay at home now. We don't expect you to stay at home.
It's difficult.
For you, do the best you can.
And
Thank
stay
you.
safe. Thanks, Daktari.
Asante. Thank you.
Asante. Did you hear CT's proverb for the day?
Let me hear it.
Stay
I've
on the
not
line.
been able-
Here it comes.
Do not call the forest that shelters you a jungle. Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Get it?
Okay. Yes.
Did you hear Eric's version of it?
I think Eric's
Eric had a version.
Of course he did. He gave it a nice twist and a twirl.
Don't insult your mother.
No, any African child knows not to.
Yes.
Any African child knows not to.
That's it. Asante sana Daktari. You do have a good one.
You too have a good one.
Thank
Right.
you.
Very many concerns that arise, but I like what she said there in the end. Caution to the people who are going and stockpiling on chloroquine.
Check other things, man.
Check out other things. You could be endangering yourself.
Yes.
And especially if you go and give the entire family, wewe kunywa nne, kunywa kila mtu, meza.
Kila mtu nene.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Siti Muga, your final word of the day.
Let these wonderful discussions continue.
Take care. 2 meters apart. Wash your hands. And if you are not essential, stay at home.
Well said. Remember your brothers and sisters. If you can help, help. Do help. Send whatever you can to somebody that you know that requires some assistance. At this point, it's all for us to do everything that we can to help our brothers and sisters. This is a Situation Room. It's back tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eric Latif, Nduoko, and CT Muga signing off. Have a good day.